Thank you.
Dean, can I get a sound check real quick?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes? Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I call to order the joint meeting of the governing body and the Planning Commission for Tuesday, July 16th, 2024, for the purpose of receiving two presentations. First, we have approval of the amended agenda. Please strike 12B regarding Smart Scale because it no longer is needed. And I believe we do have a closed session. City Attorney, could you read the citation?
Yes, we are going into closed meeting for paragraph 3, sale of real property. There's two items for that. Paragraph 5, prospective business or industry, where the business or industry has not stated its intent to come to the city. Consultation with city attorney under paragraph 8, and then also terms and conditions of a public contract under paragraph 29.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other changes or additions to the amended agenda? Okay, do we have a motion?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, please join us for a moment of silence, and Vice Mayor Mensing, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Next, Chair Finkel, does the Planning Commission wish to approve their agenda?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. At this time, I'd like to call to order the Planning Commission portion of this joint meeting. Sitting this evening is myself, Lester Finkel, Kevin Petak, and Michael Becketts. At this time, I'll ask for a motion to approve the Planning Commission's agenda.
So moved.
Motion, second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. At this time, I'll turn it back to you, Mayor. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Okay. Our first presentation is the Manassas Drive Streetlight Study results, and we have with us this evening Mr. Ryan Mattern from WallaceMontgomery. So welcome, sir.
Yeah, okay.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the governing body, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, staff, residents, guests. My name is Steve Hall. I'm the Transportation Program Manager here with the city. I would like to take a brief moment, if I could, and acknowledge a recent hire that we made in community development, Dr. Abdul Arthawi. Abdul came to us about 4 months ago, and ecstatic to have him on the team. He's been doing some great work with us, helping take a bit of the burden off my plate. So I know he hasn't had a chance to come meet you all, and so I thought this evening would be a great opportunity. So thank you for your support with that
If I
position.
could just interrupt you for a moment.
Sure.
I got ahead of myself on the schedule here. It is actually public comment time now. Terribly sorry. We have one individual signed up for to speak publicly, Mr. Mike Smith. Could you please come to the microphone, state your name and address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes?
Mike Smith, 102 Colfax. I apologize, I didn't mean to
break your presentation there. I actually just wanted to say, to give recognition to everyone with the city involved in the 4th of July fireworks presentation. There was, I believe, about 15 vendors there this year. When we were there 2 years ago, there was like 3. And we also had the kids' activities and the bands. It was a tremendous event despite the heat, and I wanted to say thank you to everyone on the city staff responsible for planning and organizing that. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else who has not signed up but would still like to make public comment? Yeah, please come to the microphone, sir. State your name and address.
Hi, everybody.
And limit your comments to 3 minutes. Our city clerk, Ms. Connor, will be the timer.
Hi, ready, set? You're ready. All right, hi, I'm Todd Spro, and I'm an actual employee of the city. So I like to say I've been here for almost 10 years plus, and I love what's going on in the city. I think it's amazing all the things going on with the First Friday events and all the farmers markets. And I think everyone here is doing a great job progressing in this Manassas Park area. I love being a resident as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Is there anyone else who has not signed up but would like to make public comment? Okay, seeing no one and hearing no one, take it away.
I'm more than happy to allow those comments. Thank you very much, Ms. Mayor. And thank you again, Abdul, for being here. Back on November 14th of last year, we came to you with a proposal from WallaceMontgomery for a potential streetlight study on Manassas Drive. We presented what the study would be, and we did move forward with the study. It's been completed. We've had several meetings with WallaceMontgomery, several updates to the report and the plans themselves. They've completed this. Really, the goal of the study, again, was to assess the lighting on the Manassas Drive corridor, predominantly in the street itself, but also at the intersections. What we wanted to do was assess the illumination, and Ryan will get into the details, the illumination and gaps that exist along the corridor. I think what you'll find tonight is the study did a really good job assessing those and identifying those gaps, making recommendations for replacement luminaires, but also some potential new poles that would help fill in some of those gaps. So with that, I'll give you Ryan Mattern with WallaceMontgomery. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. As Steve mentioned, we started this about, I'd say, 5 or 6 months ago and have done a complete inventory and review of Manassas Drive. So I'll get into sort of the background that we went over with Steve and sort of how we progressed through the project. So we'll go to the background, do an overview of our analysis that we did. Understanding the existing conditions out there was a main part of it. Then we looked at assessing the lighting levels resulting from LED conversions to the existing luminaires, as well as improved ultimate corridor lighting improvements and proposed citywide analysis for that. So, into the background, we looked at the streetlight ownership of the city and how that interacts with Novec, the existing streetlight technology that's out in the field currently, and what we can move towards, and the benefits of moving towards an LED streetlight system. Just very quickly on Novec, it's an interesting relationship. Novec is the locally owned distribution headquarters in Manassas. They serve the city of Manassas Park as well as other local communities, and the city owns the streetlights and primarily poles within the Park Central area as well, but a lot of the luminaires are located on Novec-owned utility poles. So we did an inventory of all of the existing streetlights in Manassas Drive. There's a majority of gas emitting luminaires, high pressure sodium, mercury vapor, and metal halide, which are older technologies, and a few newer LEDs that have been replaced of the older luminaires. Just to go into LEDs, semiconductors introduced in the mid-2000s. Some of the technical specifications here, it has generally a much longer lifespan than the older technologies and a better color rendition index, which means it's clearer to visuals, as we'll see. So progressive LED streetlight program does many things: safety, improves safety with the better visuals, sustainability. Luminaires are much more efficient. They minimizes uplight for dark skies policies. Compatible, it can work for streetlights as well as multimodal and pedestrian facilities. Smart, we can connect to the individual luminaires. Maintainable, longer lifespans and easier to replace, and cost effective, summarizing all that, operating costs and life cycle costs. So to dive into our scope was to inventory and analyze the existing conditions outside of the Park Central area. So this was from the western part the whole way through. Identify corridor lighting improvements, identify signalized intersection lighting improvements, and help the city estimate improvement costs. So the existing conditions, I sort of touched on it. These are above ground luminaires, mostly on utility poles. We documented them, did a field walk, took the inventory numbers of all the Novec poles that they were on, as well as the city-owned poles. We compared the conditions to the industry standards for photometric analysis. VDOT relies on IES as well as FHWA. So those were the standards. Some of the technical, the IES RP8 is the sort of guidance for illumination for street lighting. The focus of our study was on illumination, the measure of the light visibility on the roadway, as well as uniformity to make sure there's no significantly dark areas or bright areas, which we call the uniformity ratio. There's some other areas that we didn't get into but could be considered light trespass for residents, as well as veiling luminance or glare. So this sort of documents the existing conditions and the different types and wattages of luminaires out there. A lot of HPS technology and luminaires, however, they vary from 100 watts to 400 watts. A few mercury vapors and LEDs, and the at the very bottom you can see a couple metal halides, which are the teardrop luminaires. So this is it's tough to put the whole corridor in one picture to make it very visual, but this is a sort of a heat map of the illumination throughout the corridor. We'll sort of dive into little areas, but we identified 33 corridor zones as well as 31 intersection zones. Right now, the IES standards, 6 of the 33 did not meet the corridor zones, and 23 of the 31 intersections did not meet the average luminance. There's some differences in the intersection luminance requirements because of the street categories, as far as being a collector or the throughput and the pedestrians expected at the intersection. So some reasons why they're different as we go through here. So to dive into the HPS luminaire conditions, these usually emit a low yellow or orange light. They're less efficient, they consume more energy, and they have limited dimming capabilities. You can see here in HPS near May Street where I'm standing, and you can barely see my face, and on the right, the orange color of the HPS luminaires. So one of the things we focused on was trying to identify gaps. Here's one example near the Kent Village Square looking west. This is sort of a unique location because we have a traffic that's backed up that has lights, as well as the square businesses. So the middle portion of this shows our photometric analysis and the different zones, the diamonds being the intersections, the squares being the corridor, and the green and the yellow being did meet or did not meet the requirements. As you can see, here's a signal at Centerville Road and the existing luminaires there. This one did not meet the requirements. However, there's significant luminaires there because just the requirement throughout the intersection to be illuminated and the crosswalks. Our study did not, as Steve mentioned, focus on sidewalk luminaires. However, we did include all roadway adjacent luminaires. You can see here how the sidewalk luminaires with the teardrops illuminate the pedestrian walkways, and there is some spillover in the heat map to the roadway. However, they don't illuminate the full roadway, so they're not ideal for roadway lighting. This dives into the HPS technology and a visual of a pedestrian, myself, under LED luminaires as well. The position of the light, the CDR, which I talked about before, the color of the light makes the visual. Also, you can direct the LED and dim it and control it, as well as the less power, more efficient. So, taking the existing luminaires, we looked at replacing all of the non-LED luminaires with LED conversions. This basically a one-for-one swap of all of these. We identified a quantity of 120 that would need to be replaced. Part of this is working with Novec and choosing from their existing inventory of luminaires that they have. You can see here is the spec that we chose. It's the brightest, provides the most lumens. One of the issues that we saw with this is that some of the existing luminaires are 400 watt HPS luminaires. They produce are actually brighter than these 102 watt LED luminaires. Basically, they call them 200 watt equivalent LEDs. So they're equivalent to 200 watts of an HPS. So when we're replacing one for another, while we might become more efficient and better quality light, it might not be brighter. So this is, again, apologies, but hard to see. From the left is existing, on the right is the proposed heat map. We'll go into the quantity, 102. We put 2 with new 10-foot arms to better illuminate the roadway based off the existing poles that had lights. So you can see here we go from 6 not meeting to 5 not meeting. So improvement of 1, and then intersection lighting levels, we go to 23 not meeting to 22. So looking at that, we looked at what would need to happen to get full compliance of the IES recommendations for illumination of the roadway. So this is the LED conversion plus new poles. This addressed all gaps to provide adequate lighting levels and recommended additional lighting infrastructure. This would include new poles, but also new power source locations, conduits, arms. So you can see we have the quantities of the LED Cobra luminaires, the ERL-I Cobra luminaires, and different luminaire arms. We tried to use existing poles. Some locations needed new poles. We have 31 concrete foundation poles that we identified. This sort of meets the specs of the eastern part of Manassas Drive that has existing concrete poles. This meets 33 of the 33 corridor zones, as well as all 31 intersection zones. So this is, I'm going to flip back and forth, but you can sort of see here just the existing conditions and go forward to our LED conversion plus new poles and just the adequacy and the gaps One of the challenges here is we're not designing a new roadway or infrastructure, so we don't have consistency of the ability to place poles every 50 feet if we were designing a new roadway. So we're sort of trying to fit in what will best work out there. So we went through various iterations of this to get this outcome. This is another visual of the overall corridor. And then some next steps that I know Steve has been looking at that we can sort of morph this into is a Manassas Park Citywide Streetlight Inventory and Analysis tool. Whereas the Manassas Drive study that we just looked at was a photometric analysis. This could be used to identify, and I think we've already started to go out and identify existing luminaires and poles throughout the city. You can see here's our GIS tool to identify owner information. I guess this is from a previous project, but it'll be very similar. This could be done for tracking of outages, expected repair dates, inventory, web-based interactive mapping, LED. When we do convert the whole city to LED, when that happens, we can communicate to those luminaires. Also print it for field reviews or maintenance. So we'd be able to identify gaps, even if we didn't take it to the level of LED or photometric analysis. We could identify gaps with GIS. We could look at spot locations to provide improvements and apply the funding and the results for upgrades for LED and new infrastructure as needed. So this is sort of goes into our photometric analysis and a heat map analysis. We could respond to resident concerns, assess lighting quality in priority locations, justify proposed improvement projects, compare conditions to industry standards, VDOT-IES, FHWA. To be able to sort of look at holistically the city lighting infrastructure. So here we have some just appendix, if anyone has, go through those, but sort of our analysis results.
Do you have more to present?
No, that was, if we want to get into some of the numbers.
Okay. Thank you. That was very informative. Are there any comments or questions from either the governing body or the planning commission? Yes, ma'am.
So my question is, this is good information. So what is the next steps after this?
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Hampton. Obviously, one of the goals of doing this study was to identify the gaps, what the recommendations would be, and then generate a cost estimate. We have a rough cost estimate generated right now. We've been working with Novec. They gave us a ballpark figure to use per recommended improvement, and that was $7,500. I've been working closely with Novec to refine that because we just did the light on Mosby. It was fairly less than that. So I want to break down the unit list that you see here and ask them to give me a price for each individual item so I can get a precise estimate for the entire project. With that being said, I know through the budget process in FY26 there was $500,000 allocated towards this project. So what we did was we had Ryan's group kind of give us a sense of what we could accomplish based on that $7,500 estimate that, again, I still need to get Novec to give me more information for. But what we could do, there's sort of two options at this point. We could, number one, replace all the mercury vapor luminaires. We could upgrade those to LED. We could replace 32 of the 92 high-pressure sodium luminaires, and that would get us to $495,000. That's 66 luminaire replacements at a cost of $7,500 each. Again, until I get more information from Novec, I don't want to marry myself to that $7,500 figure. I believe the VDOT figures that we were looking at were even lower than that. Yeah, so I'm working with Novec to get some more additional information. That's one alternative. Another alternative is Well, that would be completing as much of the one-for-one replacement as possible. The other alternative would be to update 15 intersections to have them meet compliance. By updating 15 intersections, it would be 3 luminaire replacements and 2 new poles. That total cost is just a tad over $500,000, 3 LED luminaires at $7,500, plus 2 new poles at $5,500 per pole, and 15 intersections. So we would be doing fully 15 intersections with new poles and 3 LEDs. Now that would be $502,000 approximately, with the estimates that we currently have. And I should say too, the last few slides that Ryan went over, apologize. This was kind of setting the framework in the event the city and governing body chose to move a study forward to do something greater than Manassas Drive. We do get a lot of complaints from time to time about, certain areas of darkness or certain areas. This was kind of setting the stage. It's not a budgeted expense right now. I do want to be clear that this is not something today or tomorrow we're moving forward with. But we do have initially now data for Manassas Drive that has all of the GIS coordinates for all of those, the poles and lights that were studied already. So we are going to put that into our GIS, and we will have a layer to begin our asset management inventory in coordination with NOVEC when lights go out.
Thank you.
Thank
Do you
you.
have a follow-up? Okay. Questions or, yes, ma'am.
I just have a clarification. You were talking about reduction of light trespass. Is that going to occur just with the conversion to LED, or would that also require the pole change out?
Yeah, that would happen with the LED conversion. You can also buy luminaires with the house shields to them. So we need to get clarification if NOVEC, if that $7,500 includes that.
Okay.
But that could be part of the upgrades.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Do you have any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, good evening, guys. Thank you. This is a question on the LED and general the lighting. This new technology that comes out almost, I don't know, every year or every 2 years with these lighting. So if you upgrade to the LEDs, would it be compatible with these new changes, or do we have to change any infrastructure at the level, wiring or anything like that, or?
Yeah, the power source would remain the same. So we're literally expecting the one-for-one conversion to just replace the physical luminaire.
Right.
So there are technologies that advance with communications and whatnot, the mobility and everything that we discussed. So I don't think it would be something that you'd be chasing necessarily, but it's more so of just the photometric upgrades and illumination upgrades that an LED in general would have.
And with these LEDs, is it like that blue light?
They're more described as white.
Blue, white, or something?
Yeah, are more white toned than
Okay.
the orange, yellowish tones of LEDs and the gas.
So there's different tones of lighting we could.
We could specify. I mean, yeah, they're different tones and.
Because I don't know if you drive down Manassas, the blue.
Yeah.
It's kind of hazy. It goes into the atmosphere and it just kind of glares when you
Yeah, I think
look
I
at it.
might have skipped over a slide here. But we didn't document. Oh yeah, right here on the left. This has sort of an LED, a mercury vapor, and an HPS that you can see sort of the different color temperatures of the different
something that,
luminaires.
especially if you're going up Manassas Drive, a lot of residentials there. Like we don't want to have something too bright, nothing too glary for the drivers either, but something like in the middle. Right. I think that's that's all.
Okay. Councilmember Moore?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Steve, you've done a great job in the city getting us grants for various projects. What kind of grants are out there for us with global warming and some of the other initiatives that the federal government may have that could help offset the savings, because this is environmentally appropriate to do the LED lights?
Absolutely, Councilmember. What I would have to say is, in coordination with our grant consultant, Merchant McIntyre, I believe there are energy efficiency grants out there that we could certainly pursue, possibly through the EPA. Energy efficiency isn't really my wheelhouse. I know infrastructure predominantly is, road improvements, but there are energy efficiency grants available. That is something that, we could certainly look into to try to help offset some of that cost. Since we do have funding budgeted, we could certainly use that as, a match to leverage additional funding. But what I'll do is I'll go back, send a request in to Merchant McIntyre and see what energy efficiency improvements might be available. One of the things, when we're talking about the road corridor itself versus the intersections, I think the cell would probably be better and easier for intersection improvements because that will help with pedestrians, that will help with folks crossing as opposed to vehicular travel, but that's something I will follow up on.
The other I would suggest is contact COG. I think they may have some leeway and direction into some funding. The other thing is, what is the cost savings? LED uses less light than the mercury, so can the city expect some savings in our energy bills with Novak?
Yeah, I think that was part of the discussion with Novak, is there was a credit that they mentioned potentially. I'm not 100% sure that we got to the bottom of that answer.
They got to give us our money.
They offer a credit over a 4-year period that could be for each jurisdiction as they upgrade these new lights to LED. And again, I need to better get a firm answer, but.
Thanks, Steve.
I think Senator Roem has a question.
All right, yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Danica Roem, State Senator, representing Manassas Park. I was going to make a recommendation, Madam Mayor, that when you have the consultants actually look into the federal grants, look to see, number one, what state grants you actually have available, what state programs you have, and then my offer to you all is, once you have identified every grant possible, pretty much prior to the start of the next General Assembly session, let me know. And whatever the gap is, I'll be willing to put in a budget amendment to basically see if I can match what the city does.
Thank you.
Whatever the city commitment is. Shoot for the top, give me the highest number that you all have, and then give me the here's what we really need number as well. And let me see what the difference is between the two. I'll communicate that to Delegate Maldonado as well. I'm actually writing down to Richmond with her on Thursday, and we will figure this out, and we'll have at least some option for applying for state money to be a part of it. I can't give you a guarantee that we'll get it. Budget's always tricky, but we'll try.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah. Excellent. Are there any comments or questions from the Planning Commission?
Thank you, Mayor. Questions from commissioners?
The only follow-up I'd
Commissioner
have yes, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And the only follow-up I'd have is with regards to the cost. Did you do any looking at the payback period on this? I assume there's a payback period savings due to the reduced energy use and the longer life of the luminaires. So there must be some savings that pay back over time.
Yeah, we have not looked at that. I think once we get a final cost, that's something that we could compare.
Okay, good. Thank you.
No further questions from Planning Commission. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the governing body? Okay, thank you so much. Much appreciated. We can go into our next presentation now, which is Housing Needs Assessment Results. We have with us Ms. Anita Morrison from Partners for Economic Solutions. Welcome.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council members. and everyone who's here attending this beautiful presentation from Partners for Economic Solutions. We started working on this study about 7 months ago, and I want to publicly thank Virginia Housing for giving us a grant for $20,000 to conduct this housing needs assessment, which is part of a long-term strategy from the city to come up with recommendations to create affordable housing in Manassas Park. I really want to thank as well all the community partners that have been talking with PES and giving their insight of what's going on with their jurisdictions, especially Prince William. We have John Duckett here, Director of Housing for Prince William. We have Mark McCaskill. He has been instrumental also in coming up with this, some of the recommendations for this study. Mickey Berry has been also tremendous. I mean, we couldn't have done it without her. So we have a great team here in the city, and I'm very lucky to be part of this. Thank you so much, Anita, for this presentation.
Mayor and other members of the governing body.
Could you speak directly?
Yes, I'm Anita Morrison with Partners for Economic Solutions. Let me get this set up. That's not quite right. Slideshow. Okay. So I wanted just to start and let you, oh dear. Just to let you know who our firm is. Partners for Economic Solutions was founded in 2008. We are an urban economics firm, and we focus on housing and all kinds of real estate and economic development. So our reputation is really that we're very rigorous and objective and data-driven, and so that's what we've brought to this assignment. So tonight I just wanted to talk about housing demand and supply, the housing needs assessment, community survey results, and then some recommended strategies before we get to questions and answers. So just the demographic overview. In general, you're looking at 5,500 households in the city. Among them, the renters are about 36%, 37% of your households. That compares with 26% in the county. Averaging median household income is $91,700, and the median age is 32.8 years, which is a little younger than in Prince William County, where it's almost 36. So the population, you have a significant senior population, and it's growing, and it will continue to grow as the baby boomers get even older and move into those higher age groups. So as we looked from 2010 to 2023, the number of people 65 and over almost doubled, and by 2028, we expect that it will reach almost 10% of your population will be over the age of 65. So that has implications, of course, for housing needs. On a demographic standpoint, we looked at actually 4 jurisdictions: Manassas Park, the city of Manassas, Prince William County, and Fairfax County. And in each of those communities over the period from 2010 to 2023, each became a minority-majority county. And so that was particularly true here in Manassas Park. You see the Hispanic population increased from 33% to 47%, with the addition of almost 3,600 new Hispanic residents. Some of the other numbers in terms of the decline in the white population and the growth in some other race category relates more to self-identification. There weren't as many choices available to people who were responding in 2010, so there's some confusion, I think, in terms of, it wasn't that you had a massive move out of white families during that time. We look at housing affordability, and to get everybody on the same page, HUD defines housing affordability as spending no more than 30% of your income on housing-related expenses. So that's both the rent and the utilities associated with that. So at 30%, you're in pretty good balance. When you spend more than 30%, we call that cost burdened, and you start to have to make choices among the other things you would normally spend your money on. When you spend more than half of your income for housing, that's severely cost burdened, and you really are, at the end of the month, making hard choices as to what bill gets paid, or, food on the table and all the rest. So the other convention that we have in talking about affordable housing is to talk about households at different levels of income. And so to compare across jurisdictions, the way it has worked out is that we look at what's called the regional average, regional area median family income. So we call that AMI. And that is $152,000 in the Washington metro area as a whole for families, not just households, but for families specifically. And so then we talk about household income as a percentage of that AMI. So we have three major categories, 3 or 4. Below 30% of AMI, we talk about extremely low income. Between 30 and 50, we talk about very low income. And for a family of 3, that would be about $68,000 a year as an income. Low income is defined as 80% of AMI, or about $86,000 for a family of 3. And then that shifts based on the number of people in the household. So that just gives you some sense as to what we're talking about. To give you some particular examples, and we've assumed one wage earner for a 3-person household, so obviously this is not every 3-person household where you might have 2 earners in the household, but this is someone working full-time based on wages for Northern Virginia. So in the extremely low-income category, that might be somebody who's working as a hotel clerk or a cook or a cashier. For someone at the very low income, 30 to 50%, that might be a waiter, waitress, a bus driver, or locksmith, or a hairdresser. And then low income at 50 to 80% includes a lot of municipal workers. Again, not specifically, these are not specifically Manassas Park numbers, but it can include librarians or teachers or police in that category of low income from 50 to 80%. So as we look at the data, the 61%, I should just clarify, this is specialized information that HUD and the Census Bureau put together from the American Community Survey from 2016 through 2020. So it's an average over those years, and it's based on a survey. So 61% of the park's households owned their own homes during that period, and 1/3 made less than 80% of AMI. So those would be the first 3 bars on those charts. And then among the renters, 2/3 of renters made less than 80% of AMI, and 44% make less than 50%. So some significant differences in the income patterns for owners and renters, as you would expect. So one of the key issues that's affected not just Manassas Park, not Virginia, the whole country really, is that housing construction has not kept pace with demand. So we've had a lot of issues, not just pandemic-related, but over the last couple of decades with land costs, construction costs, land availability, a whole series of issues that have affected how much housing gets built. It's been particularly tough here in Manassas Park because you don't have very much undeveloped land. And so you've been limited in the amount of new housing that you could develop. What that meant was that you added 760 new units over the last 11 years, and at the same, a little longer time, we saw the addition of 1,700 households. So that means that we're filling up more of the units, the vacancies are down, and that starts to put some strain. It gives the landlords more ability to raise rents and to charge higher price when you sell your home because there are just fewer choices available to everyone. So what happened with the tightening of demand of supply was that housing prices went up 41% over the last 5 years, and rents went up 29%. So they were already high, and they're just significantly higher now. So then we start to look at the question of the mix of households by income and how many of them are suffering from cost burdens and severe cost burdens. So 44% of all renter households spend more than 30% of their income for housing, and 1 in 5 is severely cost burdened. We think over time, by 2033, we'll be looking at about 460 households that will be severely cost burdened, making less than 80% of AMI. You'll see that the sea green is really the most is the severe cost burden, and that pretty much comes close to disappearing once you get over 80% of AMI. That the market can help people who have 80% or higher, but below that, you get some really significant strains. And then owner households are doing somewhat better, in part because they may have a fixed mortgage, which has helped them get through some of this time. But they are still 21% of all owner households spend 30 to 50% of their income on housing, and 5% spend more than half their income on housing. So some of those will be seniors who no longer have a steady income other than Social Security or their pension, and so then taxes, and even if they don't have a mortgage, the costs of housing are still growing for them. We are seeing particular issues with first-time home buyers. As the housing prices go up, mortgage rates are very high now compared to the last few years or last couple decades, and those first-time home buyers are finding it harder to find a house to buy and then being able to afford that. We think by 2033, you'd be talking about 210 households with severe, owner households with severe cost burdens citywide. Then there's some disproportionate impacts. There are some populations that are more heavily affected than the general population. So we mentioned seniors. Almost half of households with seniors have at least one housing problem, and typically that's cost burden. For other folks, it'd be families with one or more persons who have disabilities, and that creates its own particular problems in terms of finding appropriate housing. And then among Hispanic renter households, we found that 41% of Hispanic renter households are severely cost burdened, so some differentiation among groups. Other housing problems relate to substandard condition and overcrowding. So this, I'll just go back to the nature of the data, which is a survey over 5 years, and it's a sample. It's not 100%. They don't go and look at every house. But from their estimates, HUD is saying that Manassas Park has 25 ownership units that don't have complete kitchen or plumbing facilities. So they define that to include the, hot and cold running water, a flush toilet, a bathtub or shower for the bathrooms, and then a sink with water, a stove, and a refrigerator. So it's possible that some of these have a microwave but not a stove, and that's what we're looking at, but it's not clear at this stage, but 25 is 25 too many, of course. The statistics suggest that 300 renter units are overcrowded. They define overcrowding as more than one person per room. For severe overcrowding, there were 19 units identified with more than 1.5 persons living per room. We think that's a significant undercount, that when they were asked how many people live with you, they were worried about inspectors of the rest and just didn't tell the Census Bureau how many there were. The school statistics suggest that it's many more than 300 units are overcrowded. So as we look to 2033, we're focused on those severely cost-burdened households. As I mentioned, 210 owner households and 460 cost-burdened renters, severely cost-burdened renters. And those are generally people at 50% of AMI or lower, a few at between 50 and 80, but primarily 50 and lower. So, then we ran a community survey for 2 months online with really extensive outreach. Yvette was great at pulling people in and getting them to participate. So we had 316 respondents, which is very high for that kind of a survey. And of those folks responding either in English or in Spanish, the median household income was $81,900, so a little lower than citywide average, but still significant. So looking at their characteristics, it was a good diversity of folks. 43% owned their homes, 41% rented their homes. That's 14% were living with family or other relatives, and there were 2% were unhoused currently. And then based on ethnicity, 37% were Hispanic, 40% white, 15% black, and then others, Asian Pacific Islanders and other races. So the average household size of those responding was 3.5 people. 115, about a third of those responding have an average of 2.6 people living with them that are not part of their families. But almost half of those just have one person who is not a family member living with them. The average age of respondents was 41, and 48% had school-aged children. So we asked them, if you bought a home in the last 2 years, so this narrowed it down to just a handful of the people who actually had just been through the home buying process. But what they said was that 60% said that it was very difficult or somewhat difficult to find a unit they could afford. So that's what we expected. What I hadn't expected is that almost a little over half said that it was very difficult or somewhat difficult to find a unit with enough parking. So if you have multiple wage earners who each drive to their jobs, that does become an issue in terms of accommodating enough parking. And then 40% said they had troubles finding a unit that was large enough for their families. So this apartments and the like tend to be 2 bedrooms or smaller, and so that can be an issue if you have a larger family. So among renters, there were many more who found it, who moved in the last 2 years, as you would expect. 70% of those who moved found it extremely or very difficult to find a unit they could afford. Half found it difficult to find a unit with parking, and as with the owners, they found it was hard to find a unit that was large enough for them. So one of the indicators of a housing issue is what happens with your adult children. Can they afford to continue to live in the community they grew up in? And obviously, there are a lot of things that influence where you live after you leave your parents' home. But what we found in the survey, we had 106 adult children among the people who responded. And of those, 13% were able to buy a home in the local area in Manassas Park, Manassas, or Prince William County. 16% were able to rent a home in the area. But 24% had to move away because they could not afford local housing. And then there are another 43% that are still living with their parents, and so it's, in some cases that's a good thing, and others it's maybe not the ideal, right? We asked them about their concerns about housing. The first question was about, are you living with inadequate or without adequate heat, electricity, plumbing, or water? And 15% said yes. But then when we asked them, are you worried about unhealthy conditions in your home, 86% said no. But they did report mold for some, disrepair, some water intrusion, and other issues. So it's not a horrible number, but it's still a concern. We asked about transportation, and 26% had concerns about public transportation, primarily the frequency of service, the distance from their homes, and the hours of operation. And then we asked about conditions in walking in their neighborhood, and one half said they were concerned about walking conditions, primarily lack of sidewalks, the speed of the passing traffic, walkable access to shopping, the condition of the sidewalks, and crossing major streets were their major concerns. And then relative to personal safety concerns, 1/4 reported they had concerns about personal safety, and those were generally robberies, burglaries, theft, and drug activity. Fewer people responded with car break-ins, speeding cars, and bad drivers, and 7% said gang members, delinquents, and violence were their concerns relative to public safety. And then the last question, we explained that most affordable housing needs financial incentives from government or other sources to be able to deliver them at affordable rents. And we asked, how important is it that the city government provide financial incentives for development of affordable housing? Just under half said extremely important, 22% said very important, and only 14% said not important or not very important. So that gives you some sense as to what your constituents are thinking. So turning over to the issue of strategies and the issues we need to respond to. I mentioned the land availability as being the major issue here in the park, that you really have so little land still available to develop for housing that you're sort of hamstrung in your ability to respond. There are some zoning issues related to trying to provide a variety of housing to all of the folks at different household sizes and incomes throughout the city. Some communities have looked at accessory dwelling units, so a smaller unit that could be built in your backyard that you could move into when you no longer needed your big house, or where you could send that son who's still living at home and give him a separate living quarters. There are other provisions for things like triplexes or cottage courts, where smaller units that serve smaller households which is a growing share of your population. 45% of all your households have only one or two people. So a lot of them, of course, are older couples whose kids have moved out and they're still living in their three-bedroom house. But there are still younger people as well who could use smaller units. Construction costs and financing for affordable housing are issues that cut across most jurisdictions as well. So we look at strategies in 5 big categories: preserving, zoning, incentivizing, partnering, and resourcing. And then, but first we need to raise awareness. And so that's sharing your vision of wanting to offer housing for all residents. You need to personalize the issue and help them understand that it's not just somebody they don't know, but it's the person who's waiting on them in the restaurant, it's the children, the adult children who can't stay, and the seniors as well. So these kinds of hearings can be helpful, but also outreach to individual churches, to service organizations, and to civic groups can help raise awareness about the issues of affordable housing. And of course, social media cuts across everything in that regard. You can help residents access resources. There are resources available from Prince William County, from the state, from private organizations. So making sure that home buyers and homeowners know what those resources are and how to access them so that they can do things like upgrade the energy efficiency of their home. So if you can provide links to those kinds of resources from the city website, that's just one less step that they have to go through to try and find and to get access to those resources. The other part is to help them improve their incomes. So linking residents to workforce training and employment programs can help them get better jobs, make more money, and be better able to afford market housing. And then transit services that improve access to job opportunities can also help make a better match to a better job that would give them support. So some of OmniRide's OmniRide Connects programs are helping in that regard and should be continued into the future. So preserving existing housing is probably the most important thing in the near term. As I mentioned, there are opportunities with emergency repair loans and grants for homeowners who are no longer able to keep up their home. There can be improvements, ramps, and the rest that help you stay in your home as you're aging. Also, weatherization. And then we think code enforcement can be an effective tool at making sure that landlords keep up the quality of the rental housing stock. In that regard, you will probably need to add staffing to do that and to maybe expand the area that requires housing inspections to make it more proactive and not just reactive to complaints. So then I mentioned allowing a greater range of housing types, so increasing the amount of multifamily zoning that you have in the city, but again, constrained by the fact that you don't have much land that's not already developed. You can zone for those accessory dwelling units or to provide greater variety in your R1 neighborhoods. There are a few zoning provisions, like the amount of parking that's required, that affect development costs and so could help you reduce those costs and the resulting rents and prices. And then you can continue to look at the industrially zoned land around here to see if there is more that might be appropriate for conversion to housing. Obviously balancing out the jobs that are associated in the tax space to see if there are some housing opportunities that have been missed. Partnering will be essential. So you need to continue the partnerships with the county and the city of Manassas and perhaps expand those partnerships into new programs. As I mentioned, reaching out to the nonprofits and the private housing organizations can bring some extra hands to the table. And then churches are becoming more active in the housing field as they see that as part of their mission in terms of reaching out to people with less money. And so they call that now Yes in God's Backyard. So the church may make, a church maybe that whose congregation isn't as large as it once was, may see that they don't need all the parking they have and then make available a portion of their parking lot for housing development. And then home sharing, so if you think Golden Girls, or with a retired person who then takes a student into their home and rents them a bedroom, that can be a way to expand the housing supply and give the retired person an additional income source. That it's a program that Montgomery County has pursued. It's matching people who have homes with people who need housing. That's probably something way beyond the capacity of Manassas Park, but it might be something that you could undertake together with other jurisdictions throughout Northern Virginia as one possibility. And then incentivizing, it all comes down to money. So you want to offer incentives that can help pay for the development, and that might take the form of an affordable dwelling unit ordinance in the sense that Prince William is looking at this point, that would give incentives and set requirements. In exchange for those incentives, here's what we expect in terms of long-term commitment of affordability. Anytime you sell city-owned land, you should certainly be looking for a percentage of the units that'll be built to be affordable for a long period, for 30 years or more. And you might, if you're in the position where you're looking for a new library or a community center or a fire station even, consider co-locating housing on that same piece of property. We've seen that in both Alexandria and Arlington and other jurisdictions as well. For some of the costs of developing affordable units, those fees may not be able to be waived, but they could be funded from other city financial resources. And consider reducing the parking minimums, recognizing, though, that you are a suburban community and not a city where frequent bus service is the norm. And then finally, it's resources. And so as the city continues to improve its fiscal condition, consider annual funding for housing initiatives, and possibly in the longer term, that could translate into a housing trust fund. So smaller communities tend to use those funds for municipal employees to help them purchase homes, or it might be for things like upgrading facilities and the like. So with that, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. That was very informative.
Okay.
Excellent. Comments or questions from the governing body? No?
I guess,
Go ahead.
well, thank you for the presentation.
Sure.
I guess, we got to strike a balance between overdevelopment and then, providing the housing needs.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
And then there's a traffic concerns that throughout our region, more development, more traffic.
Sure.
How do you?
Well, I think my planner hat on. I think what you find is that if it's carefully planned and the housing density is close to transit, it's close to where you can walk to other things, that you won't see as much traffic generated from that new housing, and that can help to balance the impacts. But let them move to Stafford County concept is not really the answer. They still drive through your community. They still clog the regional roads as we push them further and further out. So I think it's looking for ways to accommodate additional housing, recognizing the trade-offs that you're making. Yeah.
like even the ADUs, right, they're frowned upon in most regions. But for me personally, I think it helps with the housing needs and, you know, extra, and it brings the cost down for rentals and stuff. So
Yeah,
it's hard to get that balance between
Yeah.
the community's needs and then the housing needs in the region as well, so.
Right. They're not, the ADUs are not nearly as intrusive as people fear.
Right.
I mean, my experience is that even in areas where they're strongly encouraged, it's not more than one per block. And so it sort of gets lost in the background, so.
Well, thank you for the presentation.
Sure.
Okay. Does the Planning Commission have comments or questions?
Thank you, Mayor. Questions from planning commissioners?
I have.
Commissioner Petak?
Yeah, I have two. Thank you. Great presentation. I've studied the needs assessment, and there's a lot of data and information there. It's so much so that it's somewhat overwhelming. So if I were to ask you to boil down what the three most pressing problems or issues that Manassas Park faces from a housing needs standpoint over the next decade, what would you say those three are? And
Wow.
one follow-up question before you answer is, how do those problems differ from needs across the broader Northern Virginia area?
I think it's, yours are pretty similar to what you see in the rest of the area, rest of the region, with the exception that your housing is more affordable than, say, Fairfax County and Arlington or in Alexandria. So where they may see burdens and extreme cost burdens for people at 80% of AMI or even 100%, we're not seeing that really so much for Manassas Park. So I would say it's probably your renters in the under 50% of AMI that would be the most significant issue. And then it's making sure that you can maintain your housing stock. So code enforcement, investment in existing housing is really important because it's so much easier just to preserve those units than to lose them and have to rebuild them along the way. And I'm not sure what the third would be, probably anticipating the needs of seniors. As that population is expanding, we'll see both need for independent living, but also for assisted living as well, as a growing number of people reach the ages where that's more likely to be needed.
Thank you. That's helpful. And one follow-up question then is, since you led by saying our needs are similar to the surrounding communities, have you put together any information that is maybe tabular, that summarizes what each of the jurisdictions are doing with their needs assessment? You know, some of the general things they're doing.
The strategies that they're...
Yeah.
No, we've not put that together. There are... Montgomery County, for example, is in the midst of a very aggressive housing strategy, attainable housing strategy formulation now, and so there's a lot of information on their website. Arlington has just gone through their missing middle housing strategy of trying to make single-family neighborhoods more open to smaller units. Alexandria has been going through similar rezoning efforts, and then they have a whole portfolio of strategies and investments that they make to support affordable housing, completely separate from zoning. Right.
Sure, thank you. And that, something like that could be quite helpful for guidance to other communities. So thank you very much.
Any further questions?
No further questions from the Planning Commission.
Thank you. I have a question regarding accessory dwellings. Are there any cases of a jurisdiction having gone down that road, found that issues develop, whether they be community maintenance, parking, whatever, and then chose to try to reverse that decision? Do you know of any examples?
I don't know of any that tried to reverse it. There's certainly a fear about parking, and so some of the strategies that are used require off-street parking for the accessory dwelling units, and in some cases that's overkill, and that really puts those out of reach, that there's just not enough land in their lot to accommodate both another parking space and the accessory unit. So you have to be a little bit careful about anticipating problems and fixing them with fixes that make it less attractive to build.
Right, thank
Yeah.
you, thank you. Any other questions or, yes?
Yes, Ms. Morrison, you mentioned that contractors aren't building enough supply, and that supply is a major factor of our affordable housing issue. Some communities have used inclusionary housing policies that requires developers to build 5, 10, 15% of the units affordable or below market rate, below AMI. How effective is that strategy in getting the contractor to build the houses below market? I realize it still has to pencil out.
Right.
But it takes the burden from the city to build.
It helps if you're building a lot of housing. If you're only building 100 units over a couple of years, it's not going to make much of a dent because it tends to be about 10%. It raises the cost of development, but then the city compensates by giving them the ability to build more. You don't really have that option here because your multifamily zoning does not restrict the heights, and so they already have the right to build those additional units. So you don't really have much to trade for in the sense of new density and additional height that they could not have as a matter of right under your zoning code. So that's why I was emphasizing, if you own the land, you obviously have a lot more influence over what they build, and you can make financial contributions by pricing the land so that it helps offset the cost of including those affordable units.
Thank you.
Okay, any other last-minute comments or questions from
Yeah.
either body?
I just got one last question.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Regarding your definition for overcrowding, it
Yes.
said more than one individual per room.
Per room, right.
So even if like a couple residing in the same room, if it's a 3-bedroom, say there's a family of 4, that's considered overcrowding?
No, it's not bedroom, it's room. So 2 people living in an efficiency, a 1-room apartment, that would be considered overcrowding. 2 people living in a 1-bedroom apartment where you also had a kitchen and a living room would not be overcrowding.
Okay,
Yeah,
so you got to take those into account.
yeah.
Follow up? No, okay, thank you. Thank you so much. That was very informative. Very much appreciate that. Okay. Chair Finkel, I turn it over to you for the Planning Commission to deliberate and take any action you feel is necessary, or to adjourn if you wish.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor. We have no new business for this evening as a Planning Commission, so at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion, second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The time is 8:17. Thank you very much, Mayor, governing body. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us. We very much appreciate it. Okay, there is no public hearing. So moving on to 8A. Next, we have Senator Danica Roem with us. She has graciously made time in her schedule to present on new legislation passed by the General Assembly and anything else she would like to share with us.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Madam Mayor. Thank you to the members of the council here. And by the way, that was very informative. I want to mention one thing, a debate that I actually participated in on the Senate floor this year that I had loosely based on one that I did in the House, but I used Manassas Park specifically, and it ties in directly with what we just heard. So if anyone here doesn't know, my name is Danica Roem. I'm the state senator representing Manassas Park. I live in Blooms Mill, so I'm in the county, but I'm also right at the bottom of the hill from Manassas Park High School, so I can see the stadium lights. Anyway, so one of the issues that came up was talking about raising the minimum wage, right? And one of the examples I tried to use on the Senate floor is I said, okay, if you are at $12 an hour right now, and by the way, compared to where we were when I first took over in the House of Delegates when we were $7.25 an hour, I asked the members of the body, how many full-time employees do you think it would take to qualify for a studio apartment in Manassas Park? And I pulled up one of our studio apartments in Manassas Park. And they had no idea. We're talking, if we just heard that 2 people in one room was overcrowded, we're talking 4 to 5 people working full-time, 40-hour-a-week jobs at current minimum wage to qualify to be able to get the application to submit for the apartment. That's a massive problem. I had a senator from Tazewell, or who represents Tazewell anyway, say, well, you know, in my area, you can get a 2-bedroom for $550 a month. Like, that's still not a convincing case why we shouldn't raise the minimum wage to a living wage. Even at $550 for 2-bedroom, that's still a stress on your income when you are making less than a less than a living wage. And so that's a big reason why I'm going to continue fighting for 15 here. And on my personal experience, in 2016, the year before I first ran for office, I was making $5 an hour plus tip as a weekend delivery driver to supplement my $15 an hour for 30-hour-a-week newspaper writing income. And people could not understand that when I was asking them privately, when was the last time you personally worked for minimum wage? And I was hearing the 80s and before, right? And I was just like, okay, I was 32, and it was only a few years ago. I'm 39 now, I turned 40 this fall. That was not that long ago for me. And so I have a very different perspective about trying to make sure that people can actually afford housing in this area. So that said, let's jump into the legislative agenda here. So the very short version for this, for y'all folks, is we reconvened, and this is my first year in the Senate after 6 years in the House of Delegates. Thank you for sending me there. And we were sworn in on January 10th for our 60-day session. However, we had to have special session to reconvene for the budget. We are now going back in for another special session that deals with the Virginia Military Survivors Independence Education Program. All you need to know about that is we fixed the problem, and we will be voting on that on Thursday. And what that will do is make sure that we have $90 million additional dollars on top of the other $40 million we've already approved to go to fund this program that provides tuition waivers for Gold Star families. And we have seen one of our Gold Star families actually in a number of events, you know, here recently. And we also make sure that we include those Gold Star families also include for first responders, as well as people who come from 90% to 100% disability related to military service. I was actually at a graduation ceremony for a lot of our schools, including Manassas Park, as I always am. And I was like, hey, take a picture of my kid crossing the stage. I did. I sent it to the mom, and the mom later tell me, oh yeah, my kid's going to VCU on that VMS-EDP scholarship, or well, tuition waiver. And so that's a really, really big deal. So I wanted to point out a few of the bills that we actually passed this year. So if you'd like to go on to the next slide. So I was the only Democratic senator out of 21 members this year who did not get vetoed. So, woo, that was cool. For me anyway, not so much for all of my colleagues in the House. Kind of not much dissimilar numbers here. But a few things I want people to know about. This first one, this concerns the area of thoroughfare west of the town of Haymarket in the general area here. But considering that we actually have a historic African American cemetery that is located right next to the Manassas Park Community Center, I thought this is kind of actually a little bit pertinent for y'all here too. So what this one does is basically says that if someone in your family is, or if your family is buried in a family cemetery located on private property, you will now have an ability to be able to bury next to your loved ones. Someone might say, private property, but I own this. The Constitution of Virginia actually exempts cemeteries on your private property from taxes. And so therefore, there's a state interest in us. Thus, this is what we did. It took us 3 tries to do this, and the whole point of this was to take care of a massive problem in the thoroughfare community. This is really related to heirs properties that were largely concerned with historic Black and Native populations. Next part, photo speed enforcement devices. I hope against all hope that we never have to have something with this in Manassas Park, but ... we do need this in Gainesville, hence why I put in this bill. I was the only member of the General Assembly who actually got a speed camera bill out this year. And the whole point of this is to basically say that if you are in the 751 feet to 1,000 foot zone away from basically away from a school, and you are at a intersection with a crosswalk where there has been a fatality since January 1st, 2014, at locality expense, you may now establish a speed camera there. You can already do that under existing state law within 750 feet, but a fatality that we had along Somerset Crossing Drive at Forkland Way last year, that was at about 850 feet from Buckland Mills Elementary. So we passed this bill to allow that. Basically, God forbid something ever happened next to Cougar Elementary, Manassas Park Elementary, the middle school or the high school, and it was outside that 750 feet, but within 1,000 feet, you would now be able to qualify to have that. There is an issue about, will you be able to have basically cost recovery from this? I opted not to with this legislation. We'll see what the localities do in the meantime, and then we can come back in the future. But if you want to get to a majority vote, you have to be able to count real well, and I can. So 51 plus 21 equals this bill, and that's what we could get signed. All right, let's move on to the next one. So I am, as always, really, really big on making sure that we deal with guardianship reform after we pass some of my very significant bills related to this, like guardians have to actually visit the wards under their care now. I know, wild concept, but we were having cases where guardians had more than 100 wards in their care, which meant that you had 100 plus people whose civil rights you are responsible for, whose rights in general you are responsible for. There's no way you're making adequate time to actually be with that person who is an incapacitated adult. So we passed a bill last year that says you have to have 3 visits, preferably all 3 in person, but only 1 is required to be in person. Another can be by phone, another can be by a designee, blah, blah, blah. Well, we continued that work here. Long story short here, if you want to see what this stuff does, read the board. I won't take a whole lot of time because I know there's still a lot of stuff on the agenda, but just know we're going to continue working on guardianship reform here and trying to implement the recommendations from the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission that we had studied this stuff a few years ago. You can see JLARC recommendations 19 and number 2 that we actually got done this year. All right, let's go on to the next one. All right, we love our universal free school meals here at Manassas Park because you all already do it. Yay, thank you for being the good example. And by good example, I mean thank you for complying with state law because we passed my bill in 2020 that says you need to, Manassas Park. Why? Because your schools are eligible for the community eligibility provision. Guess what? City of Manassas also does the same. They also have $0 a school meal debt, just like Manassas Park does. And now, just today, we just found out that Prince William County, of its 100 schools, will have 68 schools enrolled in CP because at the federal level, they lowered the minimum threshold from 40% of your school population being eligible for free and reduced meals to participate for all, to now it being 25%. Super cool. That actually includes more of the greater Manassas area schools involved. And actually, for the first time, we're now getting west of Manassas to have a school included in Bristow, and we've got 2 in Gainesville now, so that's actually neat. Chris Young is what, Gainesville, Bristow, probably Bristow, so 2 Bristow, 1 Gainesville. All right, so anyways, 283, what that bill does is basically we're going to study how to get to universal free school meals. I put in the bill to actually do it this year. They told me to study it, fine, and we'll get a report back November 1st. Other one, this one I would love to see you all participate here in Manassas Park. The Farm to School Task Force, the whole point of this is so that we can teach more Virginia students how to grow food here in Virginia and to have more Virginia grown food actually served in Virginia schools. Why? More nutritious, and from a climate change perspective, by the way, cuts down on emissions. So if we can encourage gardening and encourage students how to learn how to do that sort of stuff, just like they do at Brentsville District High School, by the way, over in Nokesville, so not too far from here, that would be a really, really cool program. And yes, urban gardening totally is a thing. So if you are in a condo, if you're in an apartment, you actually do have the ability to learn how to do stuff like this, which is super cool for this area. All right, let's go on to the next one. Yours truly sure does love protecting reporters. It's almost like I was one for 10 and a half years, and maybe, I don't know, I had interviewed the mayor for like a lot of that. But during that whole time, I was really, really always wondering why Virginia was so obstinate about not having a shield law that protected news reporters from being jailed for protecting the identity of confidential sources. So 4 times over 7 years, I have carried legislation about this. In year 3, we were able to actually establish the bulk of state law with this that protected reporters in criminal court, but they always left out administrative and civil courts. finally got that over the finish line this year. So that is a personal victory that allows me to sleep at night knowing that I'm not in a newsroom anymore, and now I can finally make my peace with that. SB 325 for veterans. This is a really cool one. What I did was I partnered up with a Republican delegate out of Chesterfield, myself as a Democrat from Manassas, aka Prince William County. And we worked together and we unanimously got a bill passed that will directly affect the greater Prince William area, including Manassas Park. This basically says that if you are a military family and you're going to adopt children, that, basically your petition, once it goes through the whole process, goes to the top of the pile for the judge to expedite and get it done, get the decree over with. The reason for that is that we had kids that were being left uninsured because they were not being picked up from TRICARE or other military healthcare service. And by expediting this, we're able to get those kids covered much quicker. And, who's going to say no to veterans adopting kids? That seems like a no-brainer, and everyone's cool with it. It's not that you have a lot of these families, so it's not like you're going to have constantly people coming out of line to get to the front of the line. It's just that when it does happen, we'll take the paper out, slap it on top of the pile, and say, let's go get this done. All right, next one. Ongoing policy. I should also mention in there, by the way, my FOIA fees bill that you all hate, I love. Town of Haymarket likes my bill. That's nice. That one has gone to study once again, so I'll let you know how that one goes. And by I mean VML will let you know how that goes, and then I will just have to watch your legislative agenda next year telling me to kill my own bill, and then we'll see how that goes. Thank you, appreciate it. Neat. So my data center bills doesn't affect Manassas Park so much. However, what it does affect with Manassas Park is the fact that they consume massive amounts of energy, which means that this is a stress that's being put on the grid right now. That absolutely does affect Manassas Park. It affects ratepayers statewide, quite frankly, right now. And so I have a whole host of bills. I put in this year 5 to be exact, that were all sent to JLARC for the study. The study is due back to us this fall. And when we get it back, I will be leading the charge once again next year. So let's go on to the next slides, please. And we'll keep going past that one. And we'll go past that one too. Okay, legislation carried into 2025. So my FOIA fees reform bill, we will see you all again next year. And then we have our Hunger-Free Campus Act. I love this bill. This is a great bill. This is a bill that actually the Manassas Nova campus is already mostly in compliance with. The thing is, they're actually in compliance with it. They don't do meal swipes at the Nova campus, but they have made sure that students know how to know what SNAP is, how to actually benefit from SNAP, and how to use SNAP within the community. And they actually have a food pantry on campus. We love that. We want to encourage that at all of our colleges and universities statewide. And so basically we want to provide incentives. Bill got out of Education Committee. People loved it. Went into a PROPS, and they were like, maybe we'll fund it another year. So, we'll give that another try another time. All right, let's go on to the next bill, or the next one for General Assembly updates. Okay, so as we saw here, we had reconvenes, blah, blah, blah. Long story short is we will finally complete all the work that should have been done pretty much at veto session back in April. We will complete that June 18th. And then immediately upon that, we're going to be putting together our legislative agenda for the 2025 General Assembly session. This is where you all come in, and I'm not just speaking to the mayor and council. I mean the citizens here who are in the room here as well. If you have legislative ideas, if you have things that you would like to see your government do for you, let me know. If you have a bill idea, I know some of you probably do here, reach out to me, let me know. If it has money attached to it, I will say, let's talk about it, and I'll let you know what our finance committee thinks of it. If it does not have a bill attached, or it does not have a financial stake on it, and it does not conflict with my morals, then let's do it, and I'm happy to support you however I possibly can. So with that, next slide, please. Transportation update, my favorite part today. You know why? Because the mayor on Thursday was part of the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority that approved the MVTA 6-year plan, and from that plan, we just secured $40 million to fully fund phase 2 of my baby, my Route 28 STAR study that I have been working on since I submitted the first legislation for it on January 10th, 2018. And that is on top of the $24.5 million we have already secured for phase 1 for the Virginia Highway Safety Improvement Program, plus the RSTP funds the year before that, bringing our total to fix Route 28 between Manassas Drive and Orchard Bridge Drive now to $64.5 million in the bag. You can all expect construction to begin in 2027. That's awesome. What's going to happen? So, some of y'all may remember, because some of y'all were actually there, we had 2 public hearing town hall events at the Manassas Park Community Center, as well as Cougar Elementary School in 2019. One was on my birthday, so I remember that one real well, over at the community center. And then in November, after that election, we held one over at Cougar Elementary. And here's what was a wild concept that we did compared to the way that we often see business done. Instead of going to the residents and saying, we're gonna do this, what do you think about it? We told the residents, what would you like to see a redesigned Route 28 look like? Here's our entire buffet of options that we have to improve this roadway between Manassas Park and Yorkshire. Tell us what you want, and let's see what we can do. We received 1,334 survey responses. If you are in local government, you know you don't usually get 1,334 people to, weigh in on stuff. That is a significant amount of interest that we had in the greater community. So, what did they tell us that they wanted? They wanted a series of restricted crossing U-turns and median U-turns. We're doing them. What that means is that, long story short, you're going to spend a lot less time at each individual traffic light, because instead of it being a 4-way, now it's just going to be 2. And that means that what we're going to do is we're going to displace the turn signal. That means it's going to be pushed over into the median. So pretty much think of it this way. Y'all know where the Dunkin' Donuts is at Leland Road, right? Okay. If you wanted to come home to Manassas Park from there, right now, you sit at the traffic light. That's actually kind of a little bit off-center, which is kind of weird. And you wait for a 4-phase signal to go, or a 4-signal phase to go through. And so you kind of count there, you wait. And then it gives you the green light to turn left. You go and turn left. What if you didn't have to wait that long, because instead you made a right turn, you got into the median, you have a raised median in front and behind you, so that you're not going to have anyone actually rear-ending you or anything like this, and then you wait for a short green light, you make a U-turn, and then you go back. It sounds counterintuitive, and all the data that we have will show you it will actually save you time and actually get you home quicker. Turning right to go left. Is this a New Jersey jug handle? No! A New Jersey jug handle takes eminent domain that goes around all like this. This takes a little bit of eminent domain. As you'll see, that little semicircle that you have right next to Birch Street, for example, that's what we're talking about here. So with that in mind, we are pretty much in the phase now where we're figuring out what is the final version of this going to look like over the next 3 years. So in the last month, we actually had a meeting right here in City Hall, and we presented some more of this for the public. Thank you to Mr. Hall for being a part of that. Much appreciated. And we actually got constituent and local resident feedback in general. Some of it was actually pretty helpful regarding sidewalks, for example. Some of the residents had really good ideas, and we're now able to incorporate that feedback. One of the most important things with transportation here that I think we are doing a really good job with in terms of being collaborative is making sure that every step along the way, the residents don't just have an option to weigh in and then they get lip service in return. The residents are actually contributing to the design of what we're doing. That's what you get when you elect a reporter as your state legislator. So we love transparency. It's a cool thing. Okay. With that said, we also have some other cool news from the MBTA that affects y'all's commutes. Number one, y'all know where the intersection is at Route 28, Studley Road, and Prescott, right as you're getting toward Old Town. We're going to have a modern roundabout over there to prevent a bunch of crashes and make it easier for people to cross the road. So that was part of what was approved by Mayor Richel and the MBTA on Thursday. And if you ever come off 66 and you go down the Parkway or you go up the Parkway towards 66, you know that the last 2 northernmost traffic lights are at Studley Manor Drive and Wellington Road. Those will both go bye-bye. What they just did is they voted for $115 million to have a grade-separated interchange at Studley Manor and turning Wellington Road into a bridge that will simply go over the Parkway. And if you want to access Wellington, from the Parkway, you'll basically go on Sudley Manor because it's actually pretty short. It's within like 1,000 feet. If you want to go from Wellington to get onto the Parkway, you'll access Sudley Manor because that's how it's going to work now. And so because of that, you will now have no more conflict points, which get people hurt and killed along that area. You're going to prevent a lot of crashes because, well, you don't have people turning in and out. And the other nice thing is you're not going to have the backups that stretch for like half a mile at a time. Instead, when you get off the off 66 and go down the Parkway, you're going to have a straight shot and not hit a single traffic light until pretty much University Boulevard, right next to the SciTech campus for GMU. This is a really, really big deal because this is going to make our commutes safer. And here's the key part. This is going to get more people who are coming in from Bristow, Nokesville, and such to actually take the Parkway to 66 to 28 in the morning instead of cutting through the city of Manassas and then cutting through Manassas Park and Yorkshire and Centerville in order to get north. That's going to take more traffic off of 28 in terms of our part each day. So traffic, so one of the reasons I highlight that is we can't just look at transportation as a locality-specific issue. It is truly a regional issue. It is truly something where you have to look beyond, arbitrary political divisions. You have got to look at this in terms of how traffic actually flows, what affects what. So here we are, NVTA, extremely job well done, super happy about those 3 projects, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff for Prince William County as well, but we won't get into that. So with that, I am happy to take any questions unless we have any other slides.
Thank you very much. Boy, that was a fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
Comments or questions? Comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have no questions. I just wanted to say thank you so much for everything you do for our locality specifically and for Northern Virginia. We appreciate it.
Thank you very kindly.
And thank you for being here to update us on
Oh,
everything.
and by the way, can I just note that how many people in local government ever see during citizens' time, hey, things are going great in the city, thank you. And then that's all the comments? Like, that was a moment. I covered local government for 10 and a half years. I didn't see that much.
Okay.
Any other questions?
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you again.
Thank you all.
We know you're busy. We appreciate you coming tonight.
Yes, and thank you for the ideas, by the way, from the first 2 presentations. That was really, really informative, so appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Take care.
Mayor, could I ask if we could move the proclamation up a little bit because it's 9 o'clock almost?
We can take our break. Let's see. How about right here? We'll take our break here.
No, I mean,
Proclamation.
move up the proclamation, have it go first.
Let's do it next.
Well, that's because it's new business. It's not old business. So you want it to come, where do you want it to be?
If we could do it now, it'd be great, so because it's getting kind of late for that, yeah.
Okay,
if that's
sure.
possible.
Councilmember Amaya has requested a small change in order of the agenda. Wait a second, let me find it. We are going to move up the proclamation for the Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So if everyone could go to 12A, that would be great.
Thank you.
Okay, this is a proclamation proclaiming October 2024 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month and flying of the Breast Cancer Awareness flag during the month of October. Whereas breast cancer is the 2nd most common cancer in women after skin cancer, and whereas breast cancer is about 100 times more common in women than men, 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with the disease, and diagnosis increases as patients get older. And whereas doctors estimate that about 5 to 10% of breast cancers are hereditary, and individuals whose family history puts them at a risk of breast cancer should discuss with their doctor or qualified health professional the proper prevention and early diagnosis strategies. Whereas since early diagnosis strategies have been introduced, a 5-year survival rate for a breast cancer patient has greatly increased, now at 91%. And whereas Breast Cancer Awareness Month serves as an opportunity to increase awareness of the disease and to encourage individuals to have a plan to detect the disease in its early stages. And whereas it is vital that those affected by breast cancer have access to quality, affordable care, and that research of all forms of breast cancer continues to be vigorously supported. Now, I, Jeanette Rischel, Mayor of the City of Manassas Park, Virginia, and on behalf of the Manassas Park governing body, hereby proclaim and recognize October 2024 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month in the City of Manassas Park, and call this observance to the attention of all of our residents. The motion is that the governing body approve a proclamation designating October 2024 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month in the city as presented, and direct staff to display breast cancer awareness flags during October 2024 in accordance with the city's flag flying policy.
Moved.
Do we have a
Second.
motion?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. We have with us this evening Suge Inspiracion, who is very kindly donating the flags that will be flown during Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Would you like to say a few words at the microphone?
Today, I'm Suji Carnero, as a cancer survivor with 6 months of being alive and at 3 years alive. I found my purpose of life while I was fighting against cancer is help another woman's to be like me in front of you. I get my dreams come true. I have to express my gratitude for the proclamation of this month dedicated to cancer awareness. This gesture represents a profound and significant commitment in our fight against a disease that affects so many lives. First and foremost, I want to extend my sincere thanks to the authorities from Manassas Park, Mayor Janet Rischel, that have made this proclamation possible. October month is an opportunity to come together and remember to all the patients who are fighting against cancer, they are not alone in this battle. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Would you, go ahead. No, you, go ahead. Would you like to show everyone the flag?
This flag, it has the word for all the cancer patients, because when I was fighting against cancer, I never lose hope. This is the hope of the patient in chemotherapy, radiotherapy, in all the hospital need from all of us. Cancer can touch many lives, not just I was a healthy person on the world, and suddenly, in one afternoon, or maybe in a call, a doctor told me I have 6 months to be alive. So I fight really hard against cancer with 14 surgeries. One stroke for my 2 daughters and for my husband. And for all my family supporting now. And my special friend, Maria Roem and Jesse Amended. Without them, I cannot be in front of you and say to everyone who is fighting against cancer, you can win. You can win and you can battle the cancer. You can be stand up in front of everybody like me. Never lose hope. Hope for you and hope for your friends and hope for your family. Never lose hope, because hope, we hope and when you believe in you, you can make anything possible.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We welcome you to stay on and at the meeting, but we understand that you're probably busy. So feel free to either stay or go, whatever you're moved to do. Thank you. Okay, our next item is 9A, and that would be staffing request from our registrar.
Thank you.
Good evening, governing body. Patricia Brendel, the Director of Elections at the City of Manassas Park. Len Tabachi, who's handing out some additional information, is our Vice Chair on the Electoral Board. And Dick Fisher, who's in the audience, is our Chair with the board. Mr. Durr could not be here tonight, so included in the information is his support for 2 items I'm about to talk about. My other two electoral board members also support what I'm bringing forward. Back when we had our budgets, we would normally make our presentations for the staffing that we need to go forward. We have a part-time deputy, and we needed this position to go full-time. I normally know that would go during a budget session. However, with the finances that are going around and the need to balance the budget, they got put aside. We had also given this presentation to you in our narratives, and I'm not sure if any of you all saw it or not. I think it came to my attention that it was removed. So I'm here tonight just to let you know the justifications for moving that position forward. We have grown in the city. We're really excited. We're about ready to reach 10,000 registered voters within Manassas Park, or will by the time November comes forward. We reached a wall, and about 4 years ago, the technology in our department has leaped by bounds, okay? It's been going forward. The need to have people who are able to use that technology to do the job, and we lost one of our deputies to a retirement. We went to fill that position and found a person who was qualified. She came in, and 4 months later was gone. We trained her 4 months solid. She was great at her job, very efficient, was catching on very quickly, and we were very excited. She had a position come forward that she could not turn down, and we all understood that. So here we were, back to the drawing board to hire that position again and start all over. This took place, she left in December. January, we hired the next person. The qualifications that we need are increasing, but what we're offering for the people coming into the office are not meeting those expectations. The job hours, it's part-time, are 12 hours a week. Okay, that's not a lot of hours. So we're not getting the qualified candidates we need, or if we get candidates, they are already working another part-time job, therefore they are not as devoted to us if they're able to get more hours at that other job or more pay. That person is still with us now, but we are learning that he may not be with us very much longer. Come the beginning of the year, he'll be gone. And so here we are yet again. I've been in 11 months training straight, trying to get people ready to go for a presidential election that's coming up. And luckily I have 2 great people who are working for me right now, but pretty soon I'm going to be with nobody. I haven't had any written resignations because both the gentlemen who work for me have said that they are going to stay through November because they know how bad it would be for us if they were both to be gone beforehand. But again, I'm going to have to start over sometime in January, December or January, not with 1, but 2 to train all over again. And we can't just keep going like this. The pay has gone up a little bit, but it's still not competitive. People at Parks and Recs who are there as greeters are making more than my deputy an hour. I'm grateful for every penny I get for them. I'm not trying to say that I'm ungrateful. I understand the situation we're in. But we have growth, we have retention problems. the technology, like I said, is growing by leaps and bounds, meaning in 2025, February, around about, we're getting a whole new state system. So whoever I bring in, I'm going to have to try somehow to get them through the basics so that when they go to training, that they would be able to understand what they're even looking at. Okay, I have a governor's race next year. Those are big turnouts, just like the presidential. So we're getting to a point to where if we don't find ourselves putting in a full-time position for this position itself, we're going to keep going through this training over and over again with no growth from it. So I know that it's July and the budgets have just moved forward. I would have loved to come to you during the budget time and talk to you about this, but we were told not to. We were told that the positions were took off, all of the positions, either to be added or to, add a part-time to a full, have been completely removed from the table to balance the budget. And I understood that. But then you come to a governing body meeting and see some of the positions being discussed, but yours is nowhere to be found. So I just wanted to get it on your radar so that maybe when we come around to mid-year adjustments in December, we might be able to hopefully find some funding for it. Does anybody have any questions on that? Yes.
Thank you, Patricia, for the presentation. What's the delta between the full-time and the part-time position? How much are we talking?
With the benefits included?
Yes.
$22,000.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight. I think we have an understanding of the pressures that you have, and we also know that all departments are short-staffed. Every single department in the city does not have the number of staffers that it would need. As of right now, the budget is fixed, it's been voted on, and it's my understanding that we do not have a designated source of revenue for what you're talking about. So I would make the same suggestion to you that I made to the Commissioner of the Revenue, and that would be to wait and see, perhaps incoming revenue will change, will increase as the year progresses. It may be more than what our projections are, but that would be my suggestion. Yes, ma'am.
So Trish, I'm knew for 14 years, I think I was.
Longer than that, but yeah.
Yeah, a really long time on electoral board. So I've been gone since 10 years, and I know some things have changed. Everything from the amount of hours. We now have early voting. I do know that it's now recently the same day registration. Mm-hmm. What else has changed in those 10 years that I've been gone?
Basically, the entire state board has gone paperless. We have an election night reporting database we have to enter into. It's not intuitive. You have to sit there and break numbers down. We have to offer results by precinct instead of just going for our absentee we have 5,000 vote. We need to know how many voted in precinct 1, precinct 2, precinct 3. So the number of ballots we have to have available is 3 times as much as we need, especially if there's a primary. We have to do a lot more advertising on the city webpage. I have my deputy is IT background, and I am blessed to have him. He has developed Excel spreadsheets that are phenomenal for tracking our absentee by mail. We now have permanent absentee. So we have 500 plus ballots that are going out for every election. So that's a lot of paperwork. That's a lot of, stuffing and printing. We also have to offer our information not only in English but Spanish. So all of our envelopes had to be translated, all of our forms, all of our signages at our precincts, and we have to keep those up to date. There's so much that is continuing to change. And then the new system in February that's coming on that none of us have had a look at as of yet. And every year, I see more and more changes coming down the pike. We've been blessed to not have something happen this year that would have caused, havoc. But I think they were trying to take pity on us since there's a presidential coming. But there is a lot of stuff that we have to do now where we didn't have to before. Managing the web page, like I said already, but having to understand how to do raspberries in our room for our advertising for the TVs and those type things. My deputy does the programming for the electronic poll books. I do the programming and testing for the scanner, so we kind of broke it apart. If and when he does leave, that's something I have to take back onto my platter. It is very IT-based. It's a little bit above my grade, but I'm able to learn, so it's not like I can't pick it up. But having that backup staff who has that knowledge, finding him out what he gets paid, and I'm not picking on the pay, I'm very thankful, it's going to be very difficult for me to get somebody with IT skills to his level to come in and help us do the job we need to do. There was a second issue that I had. I was running the numbers for the budget that did just go through, and we had asked for, in lieu of the full-time position, 1,594 hours for our deputy. We didn't get all those hours. We're at 1,000. I gave you the sheet that breaks down what we have. We're at 1,410, we're very close, but 184 hours in our office is make and break. So I gave you a list of what we had to have with what we had in the budget, minusing the hours that we had to have for June and November coming forward. The not covered, which is part of the 184 hours, is the packing for Sunday. We meet on Sunday before the election to do all the final prep. We print the emergency paper poll books. They take hours to print. Then you have to do alpha breaks in them, put them in the binders, those type things. We're moving heavy equipment to get it ready to go out to the precincts. Our deputies programming poll books. There's all kinds of stuff we have to do to get ready for that Monday before the election. We won't be having our deputy for that. In November or June, they're gone. Officer training. We are required to give very detailed training for our officers, new and established, every November. We try to do it in roundtable to where we break it into 3 sessions. We each teach a session of it, move the officers around so we can make sure we give them that detailed training they need. He's gone. The deputy to help us with that is gone. He's not there for November, and he's not there for June. State required audits. We will be having them for November, and we may be having 2. We know for sure we're having 1. He's gone, and the office will be closed. We usually close it so they can come help us with that. He's out. I don't have the hours for it. In November and June. June's early voting coverage, the 45 days before the election, those hours are gone. So on Monday and Friday, it's me and my deputy, not my deputy registrar, my deputy director. If one of us should get sick, one person's running the office. If somebody has a doctor appointment, one person's running the office. And by the way, we're not getting adequate break relief. We can't leave. And so we're running into HR issues there. The state training of the new VERA system is gone. That was 24 hours we put toward that, hoping that the state will tell you to shut down and come to training. It's usually 3 or 4 days. It's detailed. That person can't come. I don't have the hours for it. To get the person to 24 hours a week, that position, I vacated having coverage for the vacation or sick leave, so I could get them to 24 hours a week, just so I won't lose them. So I have no coverage. If I'm sick, Reese is running the office. If it happens to be the day that, he's there by himself on Mondays and Fridays. And so this is the stuff we're faced with. And it's funny because it's like $184 hours. That's all we're short. It's like $3,000 to make sure I'm adequately funded to get to a presidential election. I'm asking you what I need to do, or what you can help me do to fill that gap.
And I can kind of give you some historical background. When was it, like the early 2000s, I think it was, when we had cuts? Anyhow, there was 1 year on the budgets where we had a very bad year. And when the budgets were about to ready to come through, there was no money in here for the officers or registry officers to work the election. I actually had to call Richmond, because I was the secretary of the electoral board. I had to call Richmond and said, what happens if we don't have enough staff to run an election? I remember them telling us that they will send someone down here and they will bill the city. So either way, we'd have to spend money. Or luckily, we were able to get in time and get money put back into the budget. I say this to let you know that it's actually very serious to be short-staffed in this, of all the offices, this office. And over the years, when I was there, we also went through the really bad budget cuts, where we went from, what was it, 3 staff members?
To
1.25?
Well, she had 4 hours a week.
Yeah, and what we did is we banked. It was myself, a former city council member, Noreen Slater, working at nights, going through the budget, and a lot of meetings with Trish, where we had to do some very creative things to work around the budget cuts. And that included removing one of her staff members, and then having a staff member come in 4 days a week, and where we banked the hours towards election time, so that we would not be in the situation where the state would come down and have to supplement us and then bill us. So I only let you know I know what you said, Madam Mayor, but I can tell you from my experience, this office has been put through the ringer a lot over the years, with cuts to staffing, doing little with next to nothing. I don't know, what would happen if you don't have the staff hours for this. What happens if you're down to one person, or God forbid there is a flu come out and then you have no staffing?
We close.
And then do we get in trouble with Richmond?
We can get sued. We're supposed to be open every day, 8:30 to 4:30, the whole hours. So we stagger lunches. Sometimes we just don't take them. We eat in the office, but we don't leave. If you close because you can't staff it, and somebody comes to register to vote and they can't, you disenfranchise the voter. That's a big no-no. And we don't often close our office. We are permitted to for training, the 2 trainings that we have. We're having one we're going to close because we didn't want to deal with getting reimbursed for travel, and we could get it a different way, so we chose that path. But I don't want to be in that position. I don't know what happens if somebody goes after us for disenfranchising them, or they come in to vote, and that was the only day they could vote early, and we're not there. Even having to go to the bathroom if you're by yourself, you're having to lock down the office. And if it's early voting time, you put the ballots back in the secured room, you pull the scanner back, you shut it down, you put it in the secured room, you lock the doors, you lock your purse, you go to the bathroom, you come back out, you pull everything back out, you start the machines, and you go again. It creates burdens and issues within the office when you can't do what other people can do. Other people aren't service-based like we are. We deal with citizens. Other people can shut the door, go on vacation, come back and deal with the build-up or whatever at their own pace. We have citizens we have to deal with day in and day out. Questions on the phone, registrations are ready to hit through the roof. And the observers, oh my God, the observers come in our way. You have no clue what's coming. And the FOIA request, that would make your hair fall out. They're horrible. But we've gone through this. I've done this for 26 years. We've never gotten bad press. I don't want to start getting it.
Patricia, I wanted to ask you, would it be feasible for you to wait until maybe 4 or 5 months and see how the projections work out? That would take you up to election time. And then the city would have an idea of what the incoming revenue is going to be. Is that feasible?
Are you talking like a mid-year amendment? Is that what you're talking about? Because again, November hits in November. We start in September 20th. And as it is, I don't have the guy coming in to help packing the ballots. It's me and Reese. He'll help some, but not as much as I wanted. So I just don't want to overspend to get what I need for November for you to tell me no, and I have nothing for June. That would look really good for a new person coming in on training. You're not going to get any hours, I promise you. You're stuck with 24. I'm stuck in this circle, and so it's like, I want to say yes, but I understand there's fiscal issues, and I understand every department's hurting, but we're hurting too. And right now, we have a snowstorm heading at us, and it looks like an election, a presidential election year. These are things that I take very seriously. So I can do that, but it's going to be much worse when I come back and you tell me you can't give me any more money for June.
Patricia, what's the, I got a question here. What's the salary right now that part-time deputy's making? Is it hourly or salary?
It's hourly. He just went up to $21.14 an hour.
So, and then moving him to the full-time would still be hourly?
It would be salary, but the
Salary,
same
okay.
amount, the same amount.
Right, so-
Yeah. We're not asking for an increase for him or my deputy. We're not asking for more money other than to fill the position.
Right, well, that's what my understanding, I guess, to the administration here. I thought I know we had a hiring freeze, but I didn't understood that, no new positions, or no new hires. But promotions, this is an internal promotion.
Well,
That
no.
shouldn't be frozen.
Yeah, so it's an increase of half a employee because you're going from part-time to full-time. So in effect, it is new money being added to the budget.
Right, well, I mean, yeah, they're gonna make more, obviously, with the full-time position. But, I mean, I guess to the Patricia defense here, then that should have been discussed during that time where we're doing the budget, that we have a hiring freeze and we have no promotion or upward movement at all for FY25, right? So that was not disclosed. So, I mean, that's a little frustrating at that part. And now we're here in a position that our department needs help with the election. Who knows how is that going to happen? And we can't provide it now.
I think, Keith, do you have something to say?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We didn't brief it. I wasn't aware of the conversation, so I'll take the hit on that. Unfortunately, the budget is passed and we have no new revenue. So, I will agree with Patricia. Her work has gotten very technical. I think a lot of department staff, their work has also gotten very technical. ERP is a prime example. We have new development. A lot of our challenges are interrelated, right? You just heard earlier, we have a shortage of housing, so we need to build houses. But with those come additional people, which increase the workload for customer service rep. And so all these things are related. It's not just Patricia that's affected, it's the treasurer, commissioner. And to be fair, hiring a part-timer is very hard. We saw that with Debbie not 2 months ago. And so I do empathize with her. The budget for 25, is unfortunate, but I also know that the presidential election is a big deal. It only comes every 4 years. So what I can do is I can look at this 184 hours and sit down with you and see what we can do. I can't promise on the full time because that's a persistent cost that adds to the out years, but at least mitigate the impact to you for the presidential election. That way, because we certainly don't want to fail a presidential election. So,
Okay. Councilmember Moore.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the presentation. My very first job here at Manassas Park was working for Patricia as a election officer. So I have a fond idea and thoughts for the things that your department does, and I know how thrifty you have been throughout the years, and I agree with Councilmember Hampton that you guys have not had a lot of resources your way, given the magnitude of what you have to do. I just asked that the city manager, and I appreciate him looking for the hours, 184 hours, but we need a better solution, I think. That's a start. I think for my mid-year, I would ask the city manager to find options for this council to consider mid-year for funding that position full-time at our mid-year budget. review. But in the interim, do the 184, get those hours to you for the election. But that's just piecing together the problem. We need to solve the problem. 22,000 for a city our size should be doable. If we have to look at reserves, you should come to us with options so that mid-year we can make a decision on how we can fully fund the registrar's office. That's my proposal.
Yeah, certainly, we'll come back with options. No, the way that we do the budgets, as you all know, year-end or mid-year or A2, we'll bring all of the needs back with, either projected surplus, et cetera. We'll bring the needs back, and at that point, we'll, prioritize just like we do with everything, every budget cycle. We do have a couple, this year in particular is interesting because we do have to close out ARPA because, it ends this year, and so ARPA affects CIP, which then affects general fund. So we got to figure out our ARPA picture, and then related to that, close out the fiscal year 24 budget as well. I think the audit should finish in November, and so we got to close out 24. I think we have a couple of lines that went over. ERP comes to mind, but we have a couple of lines that so far are under. So we got to see the impact for 24 because that's going to roll over to 25, and that's going to change the picture for 25. So we have several budgets that we need to close out in addition to the A1, and then at that point, to your point, Councilmember Moore, we'll bring back all the challenges, all the needs, and prioritize them.
And you'll work with Patricia right now to look for some extra hours?
Yeah, I think it's a fair ask. We need to help you with the presidential, so I'll sit down with her and look at this.
Okay.
One last question.
Yes, ma'am.
Trish, I remember, granted, it's been 10 years, but in 2014, you had yourself, a part-time deputy, and was it one full-time or one part-time?
No, originally we had started myself full-time and two part-time people, which around a presidential year would equivalent to be one full-time position. We've grown. We have much more to deal with than we did before.
Right.
So now Reese is full-time, our deputy director, with me, and then the other position was 12 hours. And like I said, the person retired, they didn't mind. They were getting extra money. So, it wasn't a livelihood issue. And a lot of the people we're finding that are applying for the job, it's their income. And we just saw a housing issue. Imagine, not making that much, getting 12 hours a week. You're evidently going to be looking for other employment. We're rotating. I have never spent a whole year in training over and over again. They come in and like, okay, this is what you have to do, and I can't really train you because we're like ready to go into a March presidential primary. And then they have to wait till that month's over, then you're training. So that's what we're getting to. But originally, it was me as full-time and two part-time.
So even though we've grown exponentially?
We haven't.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay. Well, at least we've come to some resolution. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming this evening. Okay. Okay, moving on to 9B, hurricane season prep.
Thank you, Barbara.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the governing body. I'm here tonight to talk about our hurricane preparedness as we get into the hurricane season. We had our first hurricane, well, not us, but hit the United States last week. So thought it was a good time to go over kind of what our plan is from the city's standpoint. So one of the first things we analyze when it comes to a hurricane or flooding is looking at our structural risk assessment, which would be managed through CIP, fixing and maintaining our stormwater management infrastructure. We also look at zoning, building, and code enforcement to make sure that any issues with impervious surfaces are remedied in a timely manner. And then obviously facilitate public awareness on existing FEMA flood zones and stuff like that so people are aware of where the particular flood zones are. Then we deal with structural mitigation. This includes recurring drain inspections, retention pond maintenance, et cetera, continuously updating and refining the stormwater management best practices for the city's stormwater management system, and then exploring emergency management grant funding that might be related to flooding and see what we can use those fundings for to help prepare for floods. When it comes to incidents, we want to make sure that we're prepared, so we have situational awareness. This includes obviously monitoring the weather, providing updates to staff and to the public, sending out resident alerts. This would be on the website, social media, Smart 911, Everbridge. And then when it comes to response, make sure that we're modifying hours, adding delays, declaring emergencies, stuff like that. But then from an operations standpoint, we're making sure that we're creating sandbags and issuing those out, putting in no parking restrictions, and then also doing drain inspections, cleaning out the culverts to make sure that they're prepared for an influx of water. When it comes to the incident response, we're sharing information. The first on scene will relay that information down the chain. Continuous resident alerts on the website, social media, Smart 911, and Everbridge. And then our response, again, we could have closures, delays, more emergency declarations, activating the EOC, stuff like that, making sure that people on staff are in the EOC or at least able to respond to any issues that we might have. And then finance would be involved for any records and expenditure tracking, especially if a state of emergency is declared. And then after the incident, we need to recover, so we continuously want to communicate with residents on the status of how things are going. Usually for a hurricane, that's things like power, when they can expect power to be restored, where power is out, where they can go to cool off if it's hot right after a storm, those kind of things. We'll end our emergency declarations, we'll assess damage, and then start the reimbursement process, and then record and monitor expenditures, close out, all those things that come with any sort of emergency. The long-lasting, those last way longer than the actual incident ever does itself. So when it comes to the city, specifically for the flood, we always want to make sure that we have situational awareness. So we're always monitoring the weather. We get reports from the National Weather Service regularly. We have people on staff that are weekly on calls with regional partners, kind of having their finger on the pulse of what might be coming our way. That's not just for hurricanes, but that's for snowstorms and the heat advisories we've been having recently. We're kind of continuously monitoring those. And then we're always looking at our infrastructure and kind of analyzing where improvements could be made and the condition of it to make sure that it is prepared and ready to handle any flooding incidents we may have. As we mentioned last year, this is the same slide from last year when I briefed you guys, but again, we have 63 documented outfalls where the water goes in after it rains. Most of our water system is underwater, so we don't see it. So one of the things that we have done, which you'll see on the next slide or the next portion, is that we have had our drains inspected to make sure that there's no blockages in them, and that was done in 2022. Haven't had it done since, but haven't really seen a need for it yet. We'll continue to monitor that and figure out if we need to have that done again, but at this point we're not concerned about it. That goes with mitigation and preparedness window. This usually happens 48 to 24 hours prior. Again, this is where staff goes out and makes sure that the culverts are clear so that they're not blocked up, so that the water has a place to go. This is when we start to issue sandbags. When it comes to sandbags, we can't issue those too far in advance, and we can't even create them too far in advance. That's kind of a last minute thing that we do right before a storm because of the how the sandbags work is that the bags tend to break if we make them too far in advance. So they'd be useless if we made them now when we didn't need them and then had them in September when we have a hurricane hit. The bags would just break apart as residents were taking them. So it's something that we do have to dedicate staff hours to as the emergency is approaching, which is kind of unfortunate given that they're busy doing other things, but it is what it is, and Public Works has that operation down pat. We'll make fire and PD are alert of what's going on. We coordinate with the schools as necessary. We assess the roads and adjust operating hours for city facilities if needed, given the severity of the storm. We push out messaging. Messaging tends to be our go-to. Fortunately or fortunately, I'm not really sure which, but a lot of our messaging over the last year has not come to fruition. We've messaged and then the storm doesn't happen, so I guess that's a blessing. People on staff laugh at me because I send out messaging and then nothing happens, and they're like, hey, I want good weather this weekend. Can you tell everyone it's going to storm? And then I do, and then it works. So anyway, so then we get to the start and the duration of the rainfall. Once the storm is starting, we're updating not only staff and you all, but we're updating the public on what the conditions are outside in Manassas Park, so that they don't have to physically go out and find out for themselves how bad it is or it isn't. And then obviously we're preparing, doing things on the back end to make sure that we're ready should everything really get bad. And then as flash floods, when that happens, first on scene would notify city leaders, then that we close off the roads, send that information out, make sure people are aware which roads are closed, they're barricaded so people aren't trying to go down those roads. But again, it's not an issue we've had in the last couple of years, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't happen. And so we are prepared to respond should that be the case. Some other things that we do when we know that a storm, again, mostly a hurricane, but it's pretty much the same framework whenever there's any sort of severe weather coming our way. It could be a winter storm. Staff is notified of the threat. They're asked to secure outdoor furniture and items and park city vehicles away from potential hazards. Public Works checks and clears culverts to ensure that they are equipped to handle the storm water. The storm threat is pushed out to the public with safety reminders and tips. Things like, hey, remember to make sure your flashlights are charged and ready to work. These are things that people might not think of. Or, hey, if you got a low-hanging tree limb, now is probably the time before the storm hits to address it, not during the storm. Staff prepares for storm response to include checking chainsaws, making sure the generators are ready to go, filling sandbags, etc. Programs or services are adjusted as necessary depending on the severity and the likelihood of a storm hitting us. And then if necessary, sandbags are made available for residents to pick up, and we let them know, when and where and how they can pick up their sandbags. As far as information, staff participates in weather briefings with the National Weather Service. They're really good about holding a bunch of briefings as a storm is quickly approaching. So, and many of us are on those calls just, to make sure we're all kind of hearing the same thing and pushing out information accordingly. Staff takes information from the briefings and various other sources and synthesizes the information and pushes it out to the staff and the public as needed. The emergency management team is reminded of key roles and responsibility, and usually a group text or email chain is established with on-call team members so that we can quickly all communicate. We all are getting the same information at the same time. Updates are regularly compiled and pushed out to stakeholders and the public as necessary, and the public is reminded on how to report power outages and road hazards. They don't always remember from year to year how they go about reporting those issues. And then from a response standpoint, staff from police, fire, public works, and parks identify and respond to road hazards. Some of the things we experienced last year were traffic signals being out because of power outages, and I think at one point we had generators hooked up at multiple intersections just to keep the intersection useful. So, it really does take a team of a lot of people throughout the city to keep it running when a storm hits and electricity is knocked out or, other issues and hazards come on. Staff does monitor rain gauge data and responds accordingly, and I'll go over that in one of the following slides. Power outages are reported to NOVEC and followed up on to ensure priority response. We've got a pretty good communication with them that we're able to say, hey, we really need the community center to have power before everybody else because they're a cooling center and they serve lunch. So, stuff like that, kind of helping to monitor where our power outages are and where they need to put their priority. And then the conditions and hazards are communicated to stakeholders and to the public. Just wanted to show you a quick example of some of the briefings the updates we've pushed out in the past. You'll see this was from last year when Hurricane Ophelia came out or came through. We just updated people throughout the day. We would change this video as conditions changed and warranted. Usually ended in the same way, saying, here's how you call NOVEC and watch out for downed trees and make sure your power or your flashlights are charged, those kind of things. So that's just one example. And then this was just a screenshot of, social media post, but this was also posted on the city's website just to warn people well in advance that, we were expecting some inclement weather. And then this is the rain gauge data. We do have 3 rain gauges, one at Public Works, one at the fire department, and one at Blooms at the Community Development Building. Those do communicate directly with people at Public Works, so they're able to get alerts when it hits a certain threshold. For the most part, our water system can't handle more than 1 inch of rain per hour. So when it tells us that we're getting to that rate of waterfall in an hour, all the bells and whistles go off, and staff is alerted to, that there could be some flooding in certain parts of the city. So that's been pretty useful, and they're really good about communicating that information to us. Like, hey, just so you know, the rain did hit, 1.16 inches per hour at that rate. Because even 15 minutes of that rate could flood the city. It doesn't take the full hour. And that's all I have for you. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Comments or questions? No?
Awesome. Thank you.
That's how good your presentation
It's the same one as last year, so work smarter, not harder.
I just want to add a couple of comments. So this year, NOAA is predicting above normal, average for the season, but they did that last year as well. So I think we're looking at the same number of hurricanes or tropical storm. The key takeaway for residents is that, Public Works and staff will go out there, will do the prep work before every projected hurricane. But some of our stormwater system is a capacity issue. If the volume exceeds a certain amount, I think by the hour or the minute, we're gonna have some flash flooding, unfortunately. It's just the way it is. So really the takeaway for residents is, if you cannot see the pavement, don't go down that road, because you just never know, so.
Yeah, that's true. Wise. Okay, moving on to our next information item is contracted accounting support performance. Good evening, Josh. How are you?
Hey, good evening, Mayor,
Good.
Vice Mayor, members of the governing body, and the public. All right, yeah, so thanks for allowing me the opportunity to present tonight. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to interject and I'll answer the questions. The purpose of the agenda item tonight, this agenda item is to provide you with an update on the Finance Department's progress on our engagement with contracted support. But before I begin, I just want to give a shout out to the finance team. They're not here tonight, but they work really hard, and they've helped with the the contractors coming on board and helping. With the contractors helping us, they're helping the contractors, if that makes sense. So the initiative began, I think, in December of 2023. The governing body authorized us to move forward with agreements with 3 different contractors: K-Tech, Ide Bailey, and A&M Financial. So far, we've moved forward with 2 of those contractors, K-Tech and Ide Bailey. And if I don't know if you'll remember, but at the last time, whenever I briefed you all, I was pronouncing Ide Bailey as Ede Bailey. I just want to clarify for the record, it's Ide Bailey. I found that out after the fact. But anyway, K-Tech is assisting us with our operations and finance, and Ide Bailey is helping us on the accounting side. So they both commenced their work around the same time in March of 2024, this calendar year. So the update will contain their progress since, I guess, the middle of March is when we started. So I'll start with K-Tech. Yeah, again, they're helping us on the operational side of the house, and this is a list of the deliverables that they've accomplished so far. In the subsequent slides, I'll give you a little bit more detailed about some of these accomplishments, maybe highlight 2 or 3 of them, but I'll just give you an opportunity if you hadn't read already. So pretty impressive list of accomplishments so far. But before I talk about the accomplishments, I also want to give you an idea of what we plan to include in our upcoming update, which I imagine will happen in the next 4 or 5 months. This is a dashboard that, let me just mention, it's sample data, so not real data right now, but in our next update, we'll actually have real performance metrics, but this is giving you an idea of the type of things that we're tracking in our engagement with K-Tech. Okay, so just getting back to the actual deliverables, K-Tech, they have been supporting us operationally. One of the primary deliverables that we've accomplished in our work together is an accounts payable workflow diagram and standard operating procedures. So we're in the process of changing the way we do AP in the finance department and the city. We're actually going to leverage our existing ERP, Keystone. They've got a web-based system that allows for us to actually automate, in an automated way, pretty much flow all of our approvals on the front end through the KeyNet system is what it's called. Right now, we do a lot of manual work. A lot of our invoices are tracked in folders on our network, and we have to track down different versions. So what this is going to do is allow for approvers to actually sign off on documents electronically, kind of like any other organization would do it. Everything is just going to be routed through the system. So we're in the process of changing that up, and hopefully we'll be able to implement that before the beginning of August. But what K-Tech did was they helped us actually workflow it out to outline it in a way where it is aligned with KeyNet, the new system, and they also built out a standard operating procedures guide for staff so they can follow along. And I should also mention, just as a general rule of thumb in finance, what we're trying to do is implement standard operating procedures for all of our processes, not just AP. So as it relates to accounts receivables, we're also just looking at ways to make improvements. Currently, we've got a decentralized process in AR. So what that means is we've got several different departments that have their own accounts receivable process. So they're using different systems, different applications to take payment. So if you're looking at this slide, you'll see that the fire department, police department, community development, and parks and rec, they're using their own accounts receivable processes. Not saying that that's a bad thing. It's working for us right now. But what we're doing in finance is just looking at ways to possibly centralize it moving forward. And what we're thinking is if we are successful in centralizing those processes, is we could potentially improve the way that we reconcile our banks, our monthly bank statements. Because right now, with all of those different systems and applications, it requires a lot of inputs and plugins from different systems into Keystone, which is a lot of manual work, and so makes bank reconciliations just a tad bit more difficult. Also, what we're hoping to do is to maybe reduce some of the costs that are associated with those integrations. For every time we have to plug in, usually there's a cost associated with it. So we're just trying to be more efficient and also, save the city some money. And then the other thing to consider is with the decentralized processes, there's the risk that we run in that cash handling is involved in these different locations, and we're not all using a uniform system. So if we're able to change that up, we can all kind of operate under the same policy as it relates to cash handling. So another project that K-Tech is helping us with, and you'll notice that K-Tech, their list is a little bit more extensive as compared to I. Bailey. It's because they're working in operations, and it's a lot of different functions within operations. But another policy that they're helping us out with is the purchase card policy revision. So the last time we updated our purchase card policy was 2006. So yeah, they're helping us build a training that's going to require all of our card holders to attend a mandatory training every year, just to make sure that we're up on the best standards as it relates to using P cards. So again, what we're going to do is work with K-Tech to build a policy document. It's not going to veer away too much from the old policy in 2006. What it's going to do is just build on it and then update it for all of the current best practices. And then we want staff to be trained up on it. So yeah, we're going to host a training. We're hoping to implement this new policy sometime this fall and also roll out the trainings. Okay, moving on to Bailey and the accounting side. So Bailey, they've been working diligently to help us with our bank reconciliations. Typically, if I'm just being transparent here, typically in the past, we've kind of been behind on bank reconciliations. And so as we approach the year end, we're already past the year end, but as we're preparing for the auditors to send us our final prepared by clients list that sort of initiates the final audit work that happens in the fall, we're kind of catching up on reconciliations. And that's exactly what we're doing with Bailey right now. Again, they are working hard, but there are some challenges with one specific account right now. I'm kind of getting into the weeds, but with our utility billing cash receipts, they're finding it difficult to reconcile those. And those all kind of run through the treasurer's office. But all of our other accounts are, well, they're not up to date with reconciliations, but Bailey has sort of engineered a way or reverse engineered a way to reconcile our accounts. And so once we crack the code on that one piece, we're confident that we're going to be able to get caught up on F24, and we'll be prepared for whenever the auditors are on site this fall. In addition to helping us with our bank reconciliations, Bailey is also supporting us with our SOP development on the accounting side. And they'll play a supporting role in our year-end closing, and we'll be able to leverage them whenever the auditor's on site. And we'll kind of figure out how much we need them once the auditors are here. When we performed the preliminary work this spring, we didn't have to use Bailey much. So we'll kind of play it by ear. We'll start doing the planning once we receive our final PBC list, which is anticipated sometime in the next 2 weeks. And similar to the dashboard that I shared for KTech, this is Bailey's dashboard. Again, sample data, but I can assure you the next time we update, we'll have actual performance measures in this dashboard. All right, so this is the budget update. So far, again, we started in March of 2024. So far with both contractors, we've expended about $37,000, and in December of 2023, which was FY24, a total of $241,000 was authorized over the life of the contracts. And as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, A&M Financial, we hadn't spent a penny with them because we don't have a contract. So I think it's safe to say that we're going to be under budget with our contracted support engagement. Just to give you a little bit of backstory on A&M Financial, when we were negotiating contracts with KTech and Bailey, we were able to, for the most part, seamlessly get agreements in place. With A&M, there was a lot of back and forth, and by the time we got things rocking and rolling with Bailey and KTech, A&M was kind of left behind, if you will. And so I've been in conversations with the Treasurer's Office and the Commissioner of Revenue. That's who A&M Financial was tasked to support, to see if the need is still there. Just so happens that the Commissioner of Revenue and the Treasurer's Office have some really big projects going on right now, and so the timing isn't ideal. I haven't given up hope that we can get an agreement and have support for the Commissioner of Revenue and the Treasurer's Office, but so far we hadn't been able to move forward with A&M Financial. There's some other items in finance that I just wanted to update you on, and the contractors are definitely helping us move forward and process improvements in general. But as it relates to fines and missed payments, we may have had some hiccups in the past, but very confident that these new policies and procedures are going to address some of those gaps. Just for an example, we are using debt book right now. We've used it in the past, but we just renewed our agreement with debt book to track all of our debt and capital lease payments. And so it's kind of like we've got 2 people tasked with monitoring it, and we're also working in conjunction with the treasurer's office just to make sure we don't miss any of our debt payments and have to incur any late fees. And then also related to payroll taxes, which is tangentially related to finance. Just want to mention that I know we had some issues in the past in that area, but those have been cleaned up. Since February, we implemented some new processes. Our payroll manager, Gina Burke, she does a great job for the city, and so we're on top of the payroll taxes right now. So I don't anticipate we'll have any issues with that in the future either. And then I just wanted to close with a process improvement that we just recently met with a lot of staff from the city about. We're updating our employee travel form. It was our form and our policy. The policy was last updated in 2014. And so we just made some revisions to the policy, again, best practices, and then also we've updated the form. We held 3 citywide sessions, gave staff an opportunity to drop in and provide some feedback on the new form, but the goal is to hopefully just enhance our accountability and have some audit-ready documents, and then also be able to sort of provide training for staff when they need it. And then ultimately, the staff should love this. We want to increase the reimbursement time whenever staff submit their paperwork for training and travel events. And that's all I got. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you very much. That was great. Comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
Can you refresh my memory how long we're going to have K-Tech in Ide Bailey?
Annual agreement, so they are set to conclude in March of 2025.
March of next year? Okay.
Yes.
So we're about halfway through with both of them?
Correct.
Okay, and we're not expecting, my question is usually when you're looking at, well, at least in my world, when you're looking at the budgets and the actuals, you're looking at burn rates, projected burn rates?
Yes.
And so our projected burn rate, are we going to stay steady? Are we going to increase? My concern is that, it might just be unfounded, but my concern is that we get to the point where, I don't know, we're not even done at the end of the year and we're out of money. And that probably just comes from my background.
Yeah. Valid concern. Valid concern and great question. So as it relates to Ide Bailey, it's kind of been seasonal. They started just when we were about to pick up the preliminary audit work. Again, we didn't have to utilize them much for that. So we may have budgeted thinking that we were going to be able to use them for our preliminary work. And then with the bank reconciliations, they just hadn't spent as many hours as we thought that they would. So they are trending under budget, but I imagine whenever we get to the final audit work and then the SOP development, the hours will pick up. Just based on the burn rate, I think we'll still slightly be under budget for Ide Bailey. For K-Tech, it's been steady. So I think we'll actually, I did the projections earlier this week, well, Monday, yesterday, and and K-Tech, we've got, based on my projections at the end of the contract, we'll have about 2,000 left if we stay on the current trend. And again, with A&M Financial,
Right.
it kind of remains to be seen, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Comments or questions? Yes.
Thank you, Josh, for the presentation. I really appreciate it. I think you mentioned the consultants working on SOPs for AR and AP. As it relates to Keystone, we're moving away from Keystone at some point, I'm hoping. Or is that not still the case?
That is still the case, based on my understanding. But it's more about the actual foundation. The processes shouldn't change all that much with the systems. There'll be differences, I'm sure, with the different ERPs. But you go through the same workflows when you pay bills, and you go through the same workflows when you bring in revenue. So we're just we're building out the foundational SOPs, and then we'll adapt them to the ERP that we have.
The new system, okay.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. That was one of my
Follow-up?
questions. No, that was it. Thank you.
Do you have a question?
So when do they do the reconciliation? Is it monthly, quarterly, or?
It's supposed to be monthly is a best practice.
So you're saying they're behind on
Yeah,
the
that,
monthly?
we are behind, and I'm not trying to come across as critical of my predecessor or anything like that, but I think historically, we just kind of ran behind.
Yeah.
The Keystone, and I don't want to bash Keystone either, but it's a laborious process to reconcile in Keystone.
Right.
So I understand why it took so long to actually reconcile. But we are looking at different approaches to potentially reconcile outside of Keystone. I put in a query to our auditors to see if that would pass muster, and I did get confirmation that it would. So working with the I. Bailey group to figure out how we can expedite our reconciliation process.
So let me understand. Do you get to see the actuals mid-budget?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Would you get to see the actuals mid-budget or at the end of the year?
Yeah, so we are in the process of closing out FY24. So, there's still activity going on in FY24 that kind of overlaps into July. So the hope is that we'll have FY24 closed out just as we're about to start up our audit work that's looking back at FY24. So I wish I could give you a specific timeline on when we would, be reconciled, have FY24 completely reconciled, but we have to reconcile it before we commence our annual audit work.
Forward, I'm saying I guess you would get the bigger picture at the end of the year.
Yes.
Is there a way you can get midpoint like in December, right?
Oh, gotcha, for FY25.
Right.
Yeah, so once
instead of waiting the whole year and see where we at mid-year projection.
Right, and that's how it's supposed to be.
Right.
So in January, by the 15th, we should be able to look back at December.
Exactly.
And see what our financial picture is. Yeah. That's the idea. That hadn't been the case historically, but that's what we're headed towards. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I have
Yes.
another follow-up question. And it's a request of the city manager, and it's just for my edification and knowledge. In FY24, can you get us the amount of late fees we paid in FY24?
Yeah, I can give you that number. I don't remember the top of my head.
No, I don't want you to do it tonight. You can send to me an email or.
Sure. And is this just for a particular issue? Because I think we had a couple of different example. I think IRS was one, and there's some other ones. So is this in the aggregate?
Just the aggregate for the city.
Okay.
How much late fees do we pay as a city in FY24?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Comments or questions? Anybody? No? Comments or questions? Thank you very much, Josh. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to consent agenda. Consent agenda consists of, is that where the light's blinking?
No,
it's just this.
Okay. Approval of the minutes of June 18th and June 25th, 2024, and adoption of the FY25 meeting calendar as presented, subject to final city attorney review.
Moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. We are right now about halfway through the meeting. Let's take a very short 5-minute break.
Yes.
Okay. We have already dealt with 12A, and 12B has been struck, so moving on to 12C, work schedule change. Welcome, Chief.
All this down here. So, put this over here. I will not project nearly as loud as Josh did, I can promise you. So, good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the governing body. Tonight, what the Fire and Rescue Department has for you is a request for a schedule change. That way we can look to improve the quality of life for our current operational staff. With me tonight is Lee Gibson. He's one of our firefighter paramedics. He's our local union representative. This is something that we've been talking about for 3, 4, 5 years, quite a long time. We thought we was going to bring it to you in April. We had a few minor setbacks with change of the guard there. And in July, I approached Mr. Nguyen, and he said, absolutely, let's take this to the governing body. So we're here to present this to the governing body. So currently, the fire department works 48-hour work weeks, okay? At the end of the year, that comes to 2,496 hours per year, all right? So our goal is to help the employee who we know we can't pay like the rest of Northern Virginia. So if we can't pay them, most of the time they leave us. But if we can reduce their work schedule, make their hourly rate kind of competitive, but their quality of life at home is a lot better, right? That means they'll have 13 less 24-hour shifts at the fire station and more time with their families to do stuff on the weekends. I lived it. There was baseball games, there was basketball games, there was family events. I was working. That was my life. I missed it. So there's things you can't get back. So this is what we want to do for our staff, to make sure that they're home with their families, refreshed when they come back to work, so that they can provide the good quality service to their residents, right? So gives them time to heal up. And when I say heal up, it's between the years. You know, we weren't allowed in my day to say we had mental issues or we were weak, because then you was labeled, right? Today we're doing a really good job with being able to get our staff the help they need. The city's joined with Fairfax Wellness Center, which has been great for our staff. Thank you very much. So how are we going to go from 48 to 42 without touching the FY25 budget, which is very, very, very tight, okay? We can do this without any money being added into our budget. So once we realized that some funding was cut out of the FY25 budget, I approached Mr. Gibson. We said, how can we make this happen without asking for funding? So we found some line items that we could probably take away, add into this different lines, salary lines and benefit lines, and cover it within our budget. That being the stipends funds, right? Fire department gets $97,700 in stipends, okay? So those stipends come from the traffic cameras on Euclid and at Manassas Drive. It's built in our budget currently till 2032 or further. So what we're gonna do is, staff said, we'll forego our stipends. We would rather have the quality of life of the 42-hour work week versus the little bit of money we get from our stipends, okay? And the stipends did not help everybody in the department. It was only a handful of people when it was initiated. There was no money for growth. So I've had people come up and say, hey, I got my degree. Sorry, I ain't got no money for you. And that's hard to say, right? Especially when this guy's getting a degree, he's already getting a stipend. So by doing the way, I think it makes it fair for everybody. So there's multiple different schedules on the 42-hour work week. A lot of the rural departments are currently using that. One's in Culpeper County, who basically are stealing employees from us now because they're doing a 42-hour work week and they pay more than we do. That ain't even Northern Virginia we're dealing with, right? This is a rural county, and now we found out that King George County is doing the same thing. So we're not only battling Northern Virginia for employees, but for keep our employees, we're battling the rural counties. So we're faced with a real issue because we have 5 vacancies, okay? We have very, very, very few people knocking on the door to come to work for Manassas Park Fire Department with current schedule and extremely low pay. We're the lowest paid in the region, $55,000. Not a lot of money to put your life on the line every day. So the goal would be to, move forward with the work schedule change. Then we could advertise on our flyer that we're going to a 42-hour work week, which would hope to increase our candidate pool to get really good qualified candidates that we want. There's a national shortage of paramedics. By going away from the 48-hour work week to the 42-hour work week, we can now hire certified paramedics that are not certified as firefighters. If they're on the if we still have a 48-hour work week, you have to be cross-trained, basically due to the Fair Labor Standard Act, right? That's what we have to watch the laws there, but we can do all this in the 42 without being cross-trained, which would be great for us. That opens up avenues to private ambulance transports companies, and not only just firefighter EMTs. So our candidate pool will grow. But the biggest issue would be retention. To retain the good people you have now, that the city talks a lot about how great their service is. I think this is the one way we can retain our people, not watch them walk out the door, and then when we get financially stable, we go back and then we can readjust the salaries, right? We're not asking for salaries now. We're just going to try to do a salary change, schedule change with money currently in our budget. So the cost is about $116,000, which would be done from the stipend money, and then some salaries that were left over from some employees that left us, and then one or two that were senior employees from 20-year plus, had pretty decent salaries. They left their money behind. So I know the sun's be coming up shortly, so I'll stop there. And if you have questions, we'd be glad to answer questions. And if we can do that, we'll be glad to show some.
Okay.
I guess I'll start if
Yeah.
questions.
Oh, I thought you were going to wait till the end. I'm sorry.
Oh, there was more?
Go ahead.
That is the end.
I know.
That was the end.
That
I
is
won't,
the
I
end.
won't, I won't talk anymore. I'll answer questions. And that should be enough.
I'm sorry, can
He's
you
done.
say that again?
I said I'm done. I'll be enough. I'll just answer questions from here on out. And I
Oh,
think that'll give
okay.
you
I
all
thought you
the-
were going to run through the presentation. That's why I was
I'm so
hesitant.
glad you didn't.
I talked to Mr. Wynn earlier, and I said, for the sake of time, I can probably just brief this out and not
Yeah,
go through the
that's fine.
presentation.
Yeah.
But if you want me to go through the presentation,
No.
I'll be here all night. I got nowhere to go.
All right.
What's the will of the governing body?
Well, I have a couple
Okay,
questions.
go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. So with the current 48-hour work week,
Yes, sir.
what is the, I guess it's 24 on, and what's the off
So there's 24 on, 48 off.
for the 48?
Yeah, then you go 24 on, 48 off, 24 on, 48 off, and then there's this thing called a Kelly Day,
Yeah.
which is, it's there because of the Fair Labor Standard Act, where you have to have this one day off where I'm scheduled to work, but I'm off, because it makes the hours work out right. So, in the 42-hour work week, there is no Kelly Day. That employee that's always off.
On the
comes back-
42-hour work week?
Yes.
No
that
Kelly Day.
42-hour work week, there's no Kelly Day. The employee comes back to work. So, right now, with the amount of employees we have 2 people off every day. Right?
Right.
With the
So-
48 hours?
Yeah.
Okay.
So by bringing them back to work, we basically create the 4th shift that we need. And it's so much easier to do this as a small department. Prince William County, Fairfax County, Loudoun County, they couldn't do it because they had to, for Prince William County to go from their current work schedule to a 50-hour work week, they're hiring over 100 and some people just to do that one schedule change. We have the luxury of doing a schedule change without hiring anybody. Now's the time to do it.
So for the 42 change, what is the 24 on, what is the off? 72?
So there's 2 different versions. There was a slide on here somewhere, but, so it's.
Yeah, I see it
You
here.
talk about it?
Yeah, sure. It's so
Yeah, that's
you
your
can do
baby.
a 24 on, 72 off,
Right.
and that just keeps repeating.
Right.
Or you can move one of the days from the 72, so you do a 24, 48,
48.
24, 96. So
Right.
it gives you 2-day break, 4-day break, 2-day break, 4-day break.
Nice.
So, I guess, let me, I guess from your perspective, the 24, or the 24-hour shift, I mean, what does that do to, I guess, the body, mentally, physically, for the firefighter, taking calls on a 24-hour shift?
So there have been lots of studies done on like how firefighters' bodies react to like the different stresses and stuff.
Right.
And after a shift, it takes around 48 hours for your cortisol levels to start to go down. With elevated cortisol levels, you have like hypertension, trouble sleeping, stuff like that. So they found that departments that went to 12-hour shifts, they actually had elevated cortisol levels more often because they're going to work more days. Does that make sense?
It does.
So when they get off the 24-hour shift, I guess the downtime, that extra day, kind of relaxes the
Yes.
body.
It gives you more time for your body to relax, and a lot of departments that have gone to it have actually seen a decrease in like hypertension and some mental health benefits from it and stuff like that.
So, I mean, because I'm seeing this as a decrease in the staffing, would the station be staffed 24/7 with this type of schedule?
Sure. We're not decreasing staffing levels. We're taking.
Well, I guess less people in the station, I guess, right?
Be less people in the station, but
Right.
all the apparatus will still be staffed every day, 24/7.
Okay.
Basically, you go from 3 shifts of 13 down to 4 shifts of 10,
Four shifts of 10.
Right.
10 hours.
of 10 people.
Oh, 10 people, I mean, sorry.
Yeah,
10
24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Okay.
And I truly believe that by sending them home that extra day, they
Yeah.
come back fresh, relaxed, ready to go, and then we have probably less sick leave, I would imagine. That's something we talked about. I think it really is going to cut down sick leave.
And right now, it's the schedule right now, what is that currently?
24 on, 48 off.
So you're just asking for an extra day off?
Yeah, so basically what you do is you bring it from, you're going to change the overall work schedule from 2,496 hours a year down to 2,184. So it's 13 less 24-hour days he would work.
Yeah, and
Without changing the salary.
And the other impact too is, think about it, right? You have 3 shifts instead of 4, so the rotation happens quicker. So if someone gets 6 on that second rotation, it has a bigger impact to the current on shift. So I think by having 4 shifts, you kind of spread out that rotation a little bit more, and you can cushion, the on-call, the sick, things like that.
And then you'll have enough adequate time to check equipment, training purposes.
Yes.
And if people are taking 3 days off, they come back, I would think there would be
Yep.
like cause too, but for training certifications, there will be no issue?
None.
Okay. That's it for now, if
That's it?
anybody,
Okay.
anybody wants to.
Questions, comments? Yes.
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Chief Soper, for the presentation and the fact that you guys worked with Mr. Gibson to come up with a proposal that doesn't require any cost increases to the city, but helps solve the problem of burnout and things of that nature for our fire department. So that's fantastic. My only question is response time. Will this new schedule impact any response times by EMTs or firemen in getting to fires and things like that? Will response times be impacted in any way?
No, sir.
That's great to hear.
No, because you're going to have the same exact individuals on the apparatus. They're just going to be on different shifts, a little kind of reorganized. There's going to be a little reorganization going on, but other than that, response times will be the same, and if they go up, I can promise you I will make sure that they go back down.
Yeah, I don't see any downside to us on doing this. It helps our firefighters, and so hopefully this body will approve that tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So I had to double check, because I remember doing hours back in the day when I had to do contracts. So when I did contracts, we billed based on 2,080 hours a year. So now we're getting you guys about close to, normal
General
people.
staff.
But keep in mind that just if they're on a fire, and it's like, I don't know what time the shift ends, like 6 a.m. or something? 7? They're on a fire, and at 7 a.m., they don't get up and leave.
Yeah.
They're still there, right? You guys are still there.
They're still there.
So that, even though they're 24 hours on, 48 hours off, they may not, probably less than 48 hours.
Yeah, I mean, anytime there's a major incident like, let's say, God forbid, it never happens, but a tornado hits the city, we're gonna bring all the staff back. All 4 shifts are coming back to work, because we need everybody we can have, because we have such a small staff. So services will never, ever, ever be hampered at all. I think it increases the freshness of the staff to go ahead and do, you know, the bang-up job they do now without having to have that mental lag.
Yeah, yeah.
Right now,
Oh, does somebody want to?
yeah, I would,
Go ahead.
so right now, I guess with the 48, you're scheduling, most of the crews work together?
Yes.
And kind of builds that cohesive, and would that still stay the same with the 72, or would it be like, you know what I'm saying, like when I play basketball on a team, I like to have my core guys with me, right, to play? So would they be rotating new people every shift, or what's the,
No.
like different, working with different people?
It's the same thing, like, right now, all 3 shifts stay the same, every platoon, like, Mr. Gibson has the same people he works with every day. So when he goes to the 42-hour work week, he'll have a new shift come to him. It might be the same shift, we don't know how it's gonna match out. But all those people stay together every day, right? So you'll relieve one shift in the morning, and then one shift relieves you in the next morning. So you always are interacting with the people that are coming and going, so you always see your colleagues.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, follow-up? No? Okay. Chief, I think it was very creative of you to bring this forward. I think this is really important. We have to be creative because we have the lowest staffing level per capita. We've got the lowest pay. We have to do something.
I would hope that we could do something to retain them, so thank you.
Yes.
Said I hope we could do something to retain our current employees.
Yeah.
I got a great staff. They make me look good every day, so, you know,
Yeah.
kudos to them. That's why I said, I will always tell you, when things go wrong, please blame me. It's my fault. When things go right, please give them the credit.
Yeah.
They deserve it.
I mean, I know I've had to use you guys twice this year. Not that I wanted to have to use you, but I did. And I can just say, it's just, every time I'm just always impressed. And
5-star rating?
yes.
All right.
Including for my 94-year-old aunt, so.
Absolutely, Chief. Very professional, very compassionate, fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you.
Questions or comments? Okay. Well,
Mayor, sorry, just
yes.
just 2 quick comment, one for residents. So I know the title says going from 48 to 42 hours, but I want to reassure a resident that the coverage is still 24/7. Just know that. And then 2, you know, like I mentioned, the revenue source for this is variable. I think we're good for 25, 26, 27. We just have to watch it and reassess. I think we'll be able to do it, but we just gotta, you know, if you approve tonight, we just gotta maintain the status quo until about 27, where the budget looks a little bit lighter for us.
Okay, thank you. Okay. The recommended motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to implement a work schedule change for all full-time fire and rescue operational staff personnel from a 48-hour work week to a 42-hour work week to be funded from the public safety stipend funds as presented, subject to final city attorney review.
Move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to 12D, which is National Endowment of the Arts Grant. Oh, Steve's up again.
Yes, welcome meeting. I'm Mayor, I'm the governing body, Steve Hall again, Transportation Program Manager.
Is it, I think it's turned off.
I think we muted the mic. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Honorable Mayor, members of the governing body, Steve Hall again, Transportation Program Manager. As you recall, when we did the Complete Street study, there were several pillars, if you will, recommendations related to carrying out projects in the city under that umbrella, one of which was a wayfinding and gateway signage program, both for entering the city as well as the Park Central area, for gateway signs and wayfinding signs to get businesses towards Park Central, and points of interest signs. In coordinating with our grant consultant, Merchant McIntyre, they identified a funding source through the National Endowment of the Arts called the Our Town program. It's their creative placemaking grant. Localities are eligible to apply for up to $150,000. It is a one-to-one match. However, there is funding budgeted this fiscal year, as well as there was an additional 200 in FY24 for this project. Right now, the only funds coming from this line item are the design. So we have ample funding to provide for the match. We expect the design to be done sometime in the next 6 to 9 months. We're working with Sign Graphics here in Manassas. And we just met, one of the requirements of the grant is a partnership with a 501c3. You may recall a couple messages I sent seeking a nonprofit. This was the reason, because we needed to find a partner. It's a requirement for the grant. So we found a nonprofit, the Prince William Art Society. We had a great meeting with them here at City Hall this morning for about 2 hours. They expressed a desire to work with the city to promote their artists, to display their work, possibly do a monthly, a larger event at one of our monthly activities out here, such as a last Friday. I think what we want to do is the partnership really have some opportunities for them to display art, City Hall, Community Center, smaller items such as classes, possibly for wounded warriors, veterans, like painting. We'd like to probably have all this culminate with something like an arts fair in the middle of next year. The grant application is due August 15th. If it's awarded, we will not be able to spend the money until July 1st, 2025. The biggest thing is it's a one-to-one match, and the funding is there, so we would ask that you support this resolution, please. Thank you.
So the artists, you'll have artists work on the signs, create the signs, the design, is that?
Well, the design is under contract right now, and what we're using to help us with the design is the branding exercise that was done previously by the city. What we would like to do is to have the Art Society folks help us with any critiques, any recommendations they might have. We're certainly not going to affect our existing branding with, the font and the accent typeface and I like the Tree of Life. We're not going to affect that, but if they have certain recommendations that they would like to include, we're going to do that. But then that's one part of the partnership. The other part would be for the city and the Art Society to combine forces and kind of promote the arts within Manassas Park.
Okay, thank you. Comments or questions? Comments or questions?
I mean, it sounds like a good opportunity, like pulling the.
Very good opportunity.
Right, we have a few guilds, people that belong to different guilds here.
Yeah.
I mean, Yessie and I, we've had one person that belongs to a guild that has expressed interest in doing things here in the city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good.
I
Okay.
I just have one question.
Yes.
So with the arts, right, so I just want to go down this line, but we partner up with the Prince William Arts, then this grant is awarded once we get a partnership going with Prince William to promote art within in the city, but we could use that funding, instead of using it for arts, we could use it for signage.
There's
no restriction.
It's a very good question and observant. Absolutely, it was a question that I had. So the requirement is that we find an arts partner, a 501c3,
Right.
that can participate with us on the grant request. The grant request is going to be for the fabrication and the manufacture and installation of the signage.
Right.
So what we're going to do is create the partnership such that they're going to be part of the design process. And while doing so, we're going to have a parallel partnership, if you will, where we're helping them promote their artists, display their art, come to the city, do displays, do training in the library. We had a great team. Holly was here earlier, the library director. Parks and Rec was present. They may like to display some art. So we're going to have these two parallel tracks. We're going to articulate that in the application. And then what we would envision doing is at this larger arts festival or arts fair next year, if the grant's successful, we want to basically do kind of a sort of sign unveiling, if you will, where we can unveil the signs, recognize them as a member of the team that helped us, design it, or at least, contribute to the design, while we're also doing this other parallel partnership to display their work, to promote the arts both in the city. We don't have a registered nonprofit specifically for the arts in the city that I was aware of. We may have members that are interested in also coming out to display their work. So that's how we're going to frame it in the application.
That's why I was reading the cover letter. It was just like very creative how they found that grant.
The grant writing itself, it's, we put together words, make it sound wonderful. It's going to be wonderful. It really is a great opportunity, too. So, I mean, to have a partner like that, and so many of our folks, our city staff interested, I think it'll be a win-win for sure.
And then my last question is that are we sharing any of the funds with that organization?
Another good question. There is a requirement that we contribute, not from the city's dollar, but we're looking at a small sum of the grant that will possibly go towards promoting that fair. So we've thrown around $5,000 to $10,000. Obviously, we need to develop a budget to go with the application. But that's the initial figure we've looked at to help with marketing, to help with PR. It cannot go, there were a lot of topics discussed this morning, but we can't rent facility space. So we're going to use our public space, obviously.
I just want to make sure it's not like 50-50 or something.
Oh, no.
So like
The
whatever
budget's-
we want to contribute to that organization, we can?
Oh, so we're not going to contribute.
I mean,
to-
the grant itself.
Yeah, the grant requirement is a one-to-one match. So if we ask for 150,000, we have to match it 150,000. But the total budget will be prepared such that if we say the project is going to cost 300,000, 290, let's say would go towards the signage and 10 would go towards the event.
To the event, okay. All right, interesting.
Yes, ma'am.
Is this going to be limited to visual arts, or are you also going to include performing arts?
Yeah, I think performing arts could definitely be included. I did reach out to the Prince William Arts Council, a lot of the performing arts. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to engage with them as quickly and get the response that I did from the Art Society. I think we're going to open that up. Melissa, who does a lot of our events planning, was here, and she was speaking to how we need to make sure we include various other performing arts, visual arts. I'm not a Streetlight person. I'm not really an artsy person either, but I'm a grants person. But I think it's a great opportunity, so.
Great.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think it is too. Okay, any other last-minute comments or questions?
Oh, one last.
Okay.
Keith, I thought we don't have a budget set for this yet?
No,
We
we-
had a dollar amount.
We do, so we have 400,000 budgeted for the sign project. What Steve was able to do is really two wins. The bigger win is the relationship and the collaboration with the nonprofit. But the net impact to the city, if the grant is approved, is $150K in grant funding, ergo $150K surplus on the budget line, that we won't need, less whatever we spend for the nonprofit event.
And this is for 2 signs.
I don't know what the scope of the
There's a
project.
total of 31 signs, and so we're still waiting to get final estimates, and again, we're in the early design stage. We're under contract to finish the design and engineering of these signs. Initial estimates, hopefully, we're not going to have to spend more than we had budgeted, because initially, when this program started, we identified 400,000 as the figure that we thought would cover it. That was 2 years ago, roughly. So, I mean, that number may have gone up slightly. But the goal here is if we fully complete the sign installation program citywide with the gateway signage, business signage, and point of interest signage, that we would basically get a net surplus of 150 less the event. So 140, say, to our budget that we'd be spending otherwise if we didn't get the grant.
And if you have the map of where these signs are going, or not yet?
Yeah, there is a map.
I forget if we had a presentation about that.
We do.
Yeah, I think
Because I want to know where the 31 signs, that's a lot of signs for, especially for just wayfinding and entry. There's only like 3 or 4 entry points in the city.
Right, so the thought, and I'd be glad to share, Keith, with you if you'd like to disseminate this. There are locations, 2 gateways. Welcome to Manassas Park on 28. One is you come northbound, one is you come southbound. There will be a handful of both points of interest and business signs as you're coming north and southbound on 28. Again, a big goal here was to get people into Park Central, because as some of the folks this morning mentioned, we didn't even know Manassas Park was there. And yeah, I'm sure you guys have heard some of that. What we want to do is get people into Park Central. That was a big goal, boost the tax base, et cetera, but also get people to our points of interest. So there's going to be approximately 6 to 8 signs at the 28 intersection. Not immediately at the intersection, but yes, they're on the map, and we're citing them now as part of phase 2. There's going to be 2 Park Central gateways as you enter and exit Park Central. So similar to the monument you see outside of our building here at City Hall, there will be one towards the top of Euclid, at the Euclid and Manassas Drive, and then another one down here near the tracks.
Yeah. That's fine. I mean, you can just send over the
absolutely.
the
I'll send you the map, and we do have preliminary renderings too.
Okay,
that I can send.
that's fine.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. The staff recommended motion is that the governing body approve a resolution in support of the NEA R-Town grant application as outlined and accept any funding received stemming from the application as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you, Steve. Okay, moving on to 12E, that would be cybersecurity software tools.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, governing body. I'm here tonight to, we have been looking at some cybersecurity tools to help with the city. The other thing is, part of it is due to the election, Department of Elections. They have a requirement called the Locality Election Security Standards, LESS. Kind of funny they call it less, but that we have to comply to, and these are some of the things that we're going to be complying to move forward. It's also good for us to have in our arsenal. The 3 tools are VolScan, which will be putting on all the computers that will let us know vulnerabilities, not just patching, but actual like ports are open that shouldn't be, different things that we need to do to lock down computers to a certain degree. The other one will be pen testing, which we're required to do it every year. We can do it more than that. We'll be in charge of it, which is testing our vulnerability from the outside. And then the third one is the compliance manager, which will take all that data in. And it also works because it's part of the Kaseya suite that we have currently. So it goes into that. So the data is shared between the modules so that we can have a better one-shop stop. So that's my presentation.
Okay.
It'll be quick.
That was easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Comments or questions? No? Comments or questions? No? Okay. Staff recommended motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to sign an agreement with Kaseya for compliance manager, VolScan, and pen testing software at a cost not to exceed $44,462.05 as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you,
All
Dawn.
right, thank you.
Okay, moving on to the mowing agreement with Brightview. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you, Mayor Rochelle and members of the governing body. I'm here to present the mowing agreement with Brightview Landscaping. By way of background, Public Works and schools have been contracting mowing and landscaping services. The school's agreement was due to expire on June 30th.
Public Works and schools partnered together to bid it to get economies of scale. We had bid it in May, but there were some issues with the bid with questions from the contractors. We rebid on June 18th. We received 5 bids. The low bidder was Brightview Landscaping Services at $171,266. We changed part of how we do the invoicing on this. We had them in the last contract give us a billing for each time they mowed. What we did instead was request a lump sum for the mowing and landscaping services and gave them a standard of performance. And that way we were able to spread it out over the 9-month growing season and prevent any unpleasant surprises at the end of the fiscal year. If it's very wet, it works badly for us. If it's very dry, it works. Otherwise, it would work badly for the contractor. The agreement will run from August 1st to July 31st with 4 optional renewal years. There's also an add-on to provide additional landscaping services for Park Central when that warranty expires on July 1st, 2025. That would be an additional $6,794 a year. There's also a 2% inflation per year built into the agreement. Schools will be built separately, and the form of the contract will be very similar to the elevator contract here at City Hall. Any questions?
Okay, well, that was questions, comments? No? Okay, that was, okay.
Mayor, if I may make a comment. So this is a great bid, and the cost saving is pretty significant. We'll have to obviously see how the quality of work is going forward. But the other piece I want to mention on this is this includes pretty much everything for us in the school, but there's one department that is not included, and that's Parks and Rec. They have the, I guess, by acreage, the largest amount to mow and maintain. And so at some point, we'll have to see what the cost is for Parks and Rec and see whether or not it's worth bidding it out and see where we can find saving versus them having part-time. So that's the TBD portion, but I also want to mention that since it's related to this.
Okay, thank you. Staff recommended motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to sign an agreement with Brightview Landscapes LLC for an integrated program of mowing and lawn care services for city and schools properties as presented, subject to final city attorney review.
Moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Alan. Thank you. Okay. We are now at our second public comment time. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment?
Just right here.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to let the city manager and the deputy city manager know that one of the residents that attended the veteran dinner reached out to me. He himself is a career veteran of the Navy, and he asked me to say kudos to the staff, that he really greatly appreciated that we honored the veterans, and he felt that it was a good thing for the city, and he really hopes things like that continue for the veteran community in the city.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else want to make public comment? Okay. Seeing none and hearing none, let's move on to city manager's report.
We already discussed that, sorry. Excuse me. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the governing body. Before I start this item, just a couple of quick comments to kind of close out some of the previous topics. Regarding July 4, I think it was Mr. Smith that complimented staff. We appreciate it. That was the first year that we've done with a lot of new amenities. We weren't sure how it was going to go, but we thought it went well. But staff is going to do an AR, and we'll bring back the findings to you all, lesson learned, things like that, maybe some stats. We know it's hot, but it was well attended towards the end. But that will be coming back to you probably in August. And then the streetlight study, so we owe you that as well. We know what we have budgeted. We know what the comprehensive issue is. We'll have to prioritize and come back with a recommendation. So, okay, so going back to this topic, so the 410 schedule, and my apologies, I don't remember exactly when this came about, but at some point there was a request to see if this schedule would fit with staff, if it's feasible from an operational perspective, based on their requirements and quality of life. And we actually went out and did a survey, as you can see on the top left-hand side there. So that's an actual survey that went out to staff, and if you see on the bottom there in the red box, 88% would favor or prefer to work a 410. Now the 410 could be Monday to Thursday, Tuesday to Friday. It doesn't delineate what type of 410, just as a 410. And so a lot of people prefers it because they get to take an additional day off, spend time with their family. So there's some value there from a quality of life perspective. And then on the right is, after the survey, we poll them again, and what's the actual operational impact and who is it actually going to benefit in your department. And so you can kind of see the findings there. And for the line department, I call them line department because they're the ones that provide services to our resident. And really just Parks and Rec and Community Development and Public Works have identified that they would benefit. And that's not because of desire, that's more because of the staffing limitation that the other departments have. And as you can see, I won't go through a lot of this, but really the overall impact is that, and I'll go to the next slide here. And then for central staff, generally speaking, because central staff is more internal, they don't have a public facing function as much as the other department, and so it's a little bit easier to kind of implement this if you want to. And then for the assessor and the registrar, you can see their findings there as well. But really the key takeaways, which is the box on the right, there's really no way for us to standardize a 410 schedule across the city. We just have two very functions in order to do this. Obviously, public safety is 24/7. Some streets and stormwater crews are on call as well. Public-facing customer, especially the one that have service counters, so you're talking about community development for permitting, treasurer, commissioner, registrar, as you mentioned earlier, customer service. All of those really, I think, we have a responsibility to really provide coverage Monday to Friday. Now, coverage doesn't mean the same person. Coverage just means someone there. And so, again, that goes back to a staffing feasibility, right? If they have enough people, then they can rotate and maintain that coverage. And so I think, unfortunately, for the public facing, it's going to be discretion by the department to manage. And then for non-public facing central staff, the HR, IT, finance, et cetera, again, that's self-directed because their work is more activity-based and it's continuous. And so if they can accomplish the work, then there's really, they can kind of manage their work hours. And so really the recommendation there is in red. It's going to be a combination of me delegating to the directors to manage the staff with the end state of that we maintain that continuous coverage where it's needed.
Questions or comments?
Just comments. I know where I work, they do have 410, but it's not required. And it's up to the up to the approval of the manager, because at the end of the day, it's what is best for the customer.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But if we did 410, what time would they start work, Keith?
It depends. So if a department with a customer service function has enough staff, it will start, I guess, regular business hour. But for those that, for example, the assessor, it's gonna be vary based on what they want to establish, and they'll submit to me kind of their work plan, and I'll kind of approve it. Just make sure there's no gaps.
Right.
It's gonna vary based on the department.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Questions or comments? Yes, ma'am.
I like your recommendation of letting the departments decide. I think, as you wrote in the slide, some departments this would not work out for, but I noticed before you switched it, that Public Works said that they could actually complete longer projects that they can't currently do. So that might actually be really beneficial for them. So I like the allowal of letting the departments decide for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think that works best. There's just no way I can standardize this, unfortunately.
Right, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Keith, for the presentation. And I agree, letting the departments determine. I have a question that's tangentially related to this. Do we have a work remote policy? In other words, who determines which employees are able to work from home and who can't? Do we have a policy guiding that?
Yeah, so I think there was a previous policy implemented by Mr. Palco. I have to dig it back up, but I think we are pretty generous with it. I think the best practice is 1 day a week you're allowed to remote work, as long as somebody in your department is there. You know, so like, let's say I have a department of 2 people, both people can't just be remote the same day, just in case something happens. But I'll dig that back up and see what the actual, truth be told, I haven't looked at it in a while.
Can you distribute? I'd love to read the policy for remote. If you
Sure.
can send that to me, I'd like to. Thank you.
Okay. Comments? Do you have a comment?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm worried about is like the high school kids that work at parks, the volunteer lifeguards. I think there's restrictions for them working longer hours or stay longer than 8 hours, I think, per day.
You want to speak to that, Dean?
Well,
The analysis only included full-time.
Oh,
yeah,
so
see,
this,
usually the 410s or any type of thing beyond like a regular work week is only for full-time.
I see.
Okay, comments, questions? Okay, no. That's good, Keith. I also agree with letting the departments decide. Yeah, okay.
and then just one quick other note before the presentation, or not presentation, but any question in the presentation. We've gotten some questions regarding the medians along Manassas Drive in terms of the landscaping. There was a project, if you recall earlier, to switch out the plants in front of the businesses to give them better visibility and marketing. And so while we were doing that, I think the owner assumed that we were taking care of the median. So there was just a minor miscommunication. But we're done with that project. We touched base with the property owner that owns the median. They're going to try and take care of it by the end of the week. So, and we'll make it clear to them that they own it, not us. So.
Okay. Okay.
And that's it.
Oh, okay. Okay. Are we going to do police department?
So they are now presenting if you have any questions.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I do have a question. I see where larceny of auto dropped from 13 to 4, excuse me, and larceny itself dropped from 41 to 29. Do we have a specific reason for that?
I don't have a specific reason. I think our patrol officers.
Can you come to the microphone? Sorry. Yeah.
I don't have a specific reason. I would just say that our patrol officers have been very proactive about it. They have a lot of forward-facing.
Is your microphone on?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead and click that button. Set me up. I would say I don't have a specific reason. I would tend to lend that to the fact that our patrol officers have been extremely proactive, visible, and then we've had a lot of social media posts, community awareness, that kind of stuff.
Okay. So there's no, in other words, the General Assembly has not passed any legislation that changes a threshold that would affect that?
No, there has not been no change.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Any other comments or questions?
I appreciate the fact that we see you more on the west side, so that's helped a lot, I think, too. So, thank you.
Of course.
Okay. Any questions for Public Works? Community Development and Public Works. Okay, any questions for CSD and CSAS? Okay. Well, I guess now's come the time to go into closed session. Dean, can you please read us into closed session?
Yes, I recommend the governing body go into closed meeting for the following reasons. To discuss and consider the disposition of 2 city-owned parcels where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position and negotiating strategy of the city. To discuss 2 separate prospective businesses where no previous announcement has been made of their interest in locating in the city. To consult with the city attorney regarding a legal matter requiring the provision of legal advice by the city attorney, and to discuss the terms and scope of a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds pursuant to paragraphs 3, 5, 8, and 29 respectively of subsection 2.2-3711A of the Code of Virginia.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. We're in closed session.
Thanks.